Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Good, and today I am joined by two extremely special guests, my friends, Caden. How you doing, Caden?
Hey, pleasure to be here. Extremely excited.
Oh, I'm excited too. And Wes. Wes, how are you?
Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. I'm super glad to be here.
I am super glad to be here. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, who are these two lovely, fancy men with their great facial hair? I know you're not thinking about me. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you might be like, no, I wasn't thinking that, but now you are. These are two guys who I have admired on Twitter and through kind of social media in general for being positive, uplifting folk who like to talk about gaming in a nice way, and I really respect it. And I like both of them, and I was like, we'll bring both of them on here today to talk about a topic that, you know, is it's pretty small in scope. It's nothing huge, except for the fact that it's pretty much all the biggest games of this past generation, because we have a new generation on the horizon, these massive machines that are about the size of houses, the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, and probably the Nintendo Switch Pro, which will dominate both of them by being triple the size of either. But basically, today we're going to go take a little trip in the past to discuss the biggest games that we think about in this generation. Will we miss some? Probably. I apologize for that. Also, there will be spoilers for these games. I'm going to kind of like lump them for you guys for each kind of group, PlayStation, Xbox, and so on, so that way you guys can look for time codes and things like that. But just so you know, spoilers ahead. They're coming, all right? And we're going to start way back in 2013. We're going to start with the PlayStation catalog of exclusive games, which out of these three groups right now, it seems like they have the most exclusive games to begin with. And one that people love so much back in 2013, a long time ago, we're starting with Knack.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. The big dog right out the gate.
I was going to say, we're going to start with one of the biggest, the biggest game, really. It's all downhill after this. But Knack. So I know one of you was like, I can't wait to talk about Knack. So
Yeah.
I was going to say, Caden, I think that was you, right?
Yeah. So my experience with Knack has been my kid brother played it and loved it 'cause he was like 8 or something when he played it. And then when Knack 2 came out, we got it. And the game was such a trash fire that like in the second level after we beat the boss, there's supposed to be a cutscene and then the level ends or it transitions to the next area or something. And it just never loads. So you're soft locked there. And I even like uninstalled the game and reinstalled it. And
no.
so like we just couldn't. So anyway, skip ahead a few years. I lost a bet to a pal of mine and Wes is on our Discord. And the stakes were the loser had to play Knack. So that game, man, I played it for about 4 hours, which somehow felt like 8 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought I was nearing the end of the game, and I looked it up, and I was only halfway through the game.
Oh,
and,
no.
I just could not. This game is such a conundrum to me because you guys probably remember, I believe the game was designed by Mark Cerny, who's the architect for the PS4.
Yeah.
And literally the only thing that makes sense about it to me as a PS4 showcase launch title is Knack's actual character model, because it's composed of like 100 or 200 of these individual little particles, and he spontaneously grows when he absorbs more of them. And then, you know, when he gets hit or shrinks, they fly all over the place. And I think just that one thing was like impressive for what the PS4 was capable of doing. And then everything else surrounding that in the game was like something that could have been accomplished on the PS1, like fixed camera angles,
Whoa.
bad level design, like every enemy you just, you know, button mash square to kill it. Like, I don't know, man. I just think it's a bad game. I would not recommend anyone play it, but what do you guys think?
I haven't played it, but I've watched some gameplay clips, and I've watched some of the clips that you put up when you were playing through it not that long ago. What did you think of the story of the game? I'm just curious. It's like you're fighting some goblins or something like that.
Yeah, it's both the world, the story, and the art direction are all extremely like disconnected and don't really make any sense together. So like goblins exist in this world. So there's this like mishmash of like modern technology and like magic. And basically the twist in the plot is that you I keep wanting to say you, but I'm actually referring to Knack's kid friend, because Knack literally has no personality and it just sounds like he sounds like a bouncer played by like Ron Perlman. And it's like, how are you this like construct of ancient technology and you sound like a bouncer? Like, I don't but anyway, the kid's mom supposedly died by falling into a chasm like 20 years or something, and she actually fell underground into an underground society of goblins, and they forced her to use, because she's like a genius inventor, so they forced her to create like tanks and jets and mechs and shit for them so they can like take over like the surface. And there's also this other guy who's like a Lex Luthor character, and he is like so obviously evil, and they just drag it out forever and forever before revealing he's evil. And it's just, I don't know, it's really bad and not handled well. And ugh,
Yeah, it doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
And then you got 2 levels into the sequel, and it was
I couldn't even play the game.
Way better, right?
Oh, one other point on Knack that I'd like to point out is that Knack has the ability to absorb other materials to compose his body out of. The first one you come across is ice, then there's wood, and then I think there's like glass. So like when I first got Ice Knack, I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like, am I going to get ice powers or something? So like literally nothing changes about the game. He just is made out of ice now. And then at the end of the level where you play Ice Knack, you exit the ice cave into sunlight, and the sunlight just melts your body, and then you go back to being normal Knack. And then
Perfect.
Later you become Wood Knack, and then that whole level just has to do with enemies using fire. So the only bonus you get from being made out of wood is that enemies can burn you. So it's just like
the power up.
Wow, amazing power.
Sounds like top game design.
Yeah, it just seems like an idea someone had that would be cool, and they just had no idea how to properly execute it. So,
well, yeah. Obviously, we're starting off on a strong foot here with Knack.
It can only get better from here.
It can only get better from here. I will. My only brief amount of time with Knack was that I was working or just got a job at Best Buy for like that time, and that was like the demo that was like moving around and stuff. So I saw plenty of Knack played at that time. Just weird launch title game that doesn't seem to go away, and for some reason they want to make it an icon of Sony, but. Whatever. I will say this, though. The nice thing is the next year they turned it around a little bit with that famous, that gentleman we all know as Delson Rowe in infamous Second Son.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that was the real, for me, the real technical showpiece of the PlayStation 4. Yes. I remember the first time I saw a gameplay video, I think I was watching IGN or something like that for the E3 preview. And that was the game that sold me on PlayStation 4, seeing those smoke powers, him able to like go through pipes and pop up out of the top onto, and then like turn into smoke and cruise along.
Oh, for sure. It was really cool. I remember watching those videos too, and I remember the reviews, they had to like the embargo or like the restriction on the reviews was you can't show his other 2 powers. And I remember like watching these things and I was like, what the heck are they? And then they're so strange because you have smoke, and then later on you get like concrete and video, which were like the hidden powers, and there was like another neon power, I think it was. Yeah, which was super cool, but I thought it was so funny that they're like, we can't let other people see like the cool hidden powers he has. And then when I got to it, was like, it's video, and you could like shoot yourself from one satellite to another, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And if you're from Seattle, I guess it was like a 1-to-1 almost, or pretty close to a 1-to-1 creation of Seattle itself, which I was like, that's really neat. But I thought it was pretty good. Like, I enjoyed the other Infamous games, and I was like, yeah, Second Son, man. I thought it was neat. Like, Caden, did you have a chance to play it all yourself?
Yeah. When I first moved up here, the first thing I did was save up money to get a PlayStation 4. I think it was like 2 years after it came out or something, and I think the first 2 games I got were The Witcher 3 and Infamous Second Son.
Dude, cool.
And I would still recommend people play that game today. I think it holds up. I think the powers that they chose are just so unique. It's like, it sounds weird, but the way it's implemented is really cool, and you never would have seen it in anything else. And just like games like Infamous, or like if you've ever played Prototype, that just give you this huge city and they let you like literally just fly through the city. Just the like it's worth playing these games just to move around the environment. Same way in like Spider-Man. Like even if there was like no combat, just being able to like fly around through the city. But yeah. Again, like what Wes said, I think it was like the first game I played this generation that I was like, whoa, this is next gen. Like especially like the faces in that game. I think they are a little dated now, but when they first came out, like the facial capture technology was really crazy, and especially their performances of the cast in that game, I think are really good. Delson and his brother, and the main villain, and
I think they actually. I mean, Delson looks exactly like Troy Baker. Pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's pretty much him
like,
at this point.
Here, let's play Troy. Here's your Troy simulator.
Right. Yeah, Wes, did you have a favorite power in the game that you recall off the top of your head? Like, was there one that stood out to you?
I really liked the initial smoke power.
Yeah, that's so good.
And then I liked the neon power because it lets you move so much faster.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally.
Did you guys play the DLC at all?
I never played the DLC.
I think it was called First Light.
Yes, I didn't play it, but I heard it was really good.
Yeah, I unfortunately also did not play it. I didn't get around to it, but it's sitting in my backlog right now, and sitting here talking about it, I'm kind of like, man, I need to go back.
Yeah,
I need to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, first light, right? Do we say first light, lost light? One of those. It's something.
I think it's first light.
First light. Okay. Yeah, I heard it was really good. That was kind of like the precursor to doing Lost Legacy. That's like the Uncharted, where they kind of do it's a small game that's kind of like an expansion or its own game off from the main thing.
Yeah, nice spin-off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I totally agree with you guys, because used to be Ratchet and Clank was a little bit to me like the technical showcase games, and they still are. And there's some Ratchet games that came out this generation we won't probably dive too into, but like. I felt like this one, and we'll get back to Sucker Punch, don't you worry. But Infamous Second Son was definitely that was like, wow, look at this. Or when he did that kind of like dive bomb thing, and
he shoot up in the air. And
it was cool.
His face got really close to the camera.
It was
and go down and just like smash everything.
It's like end of Harry Potter 3.
You got the concrete ability, and you literally just like become Juggernaut from X-Men, and you're just like, and just. Everybody in your way is just smashed out of the way. I know this is like making me want to replay that game because I forgot how fun the powers were.
That's the point. That's the hope, right? Yeah. Yes, we're sponsored today by Sony. No, I'm just kidding. And then something came in 2015, a game that caused me a lot of strife, caused a lot of people to be really happy. They look back on it fondly. I'm talking about the one and only kind of spin-off successor, but also in the middle of the Souls franchise, the one and only Bloodborne.
The one and only.
2015. You guys are familiar with this one, right?
Just a little bit.
I've prepared a 50-page essay on.
Yeah, I've got my.
All right, I'll start
my hunter clock. Statue here for you to.
I'm showing it off. There you go. There you go. Okay, so I'm gonna start with you, Wes. What is it about Bloodborne that is endearing to you still?
Oh man, the atmosphere in that game is some of the best atmosphere that I've experienced in really any game. I mean, I just love the setting. I love the gothic setting of Yharnam. And you look in the sky and there's just all this cloud cover going across the moon. At one point, the moon's like full. It's like blood red. It's just really heavy, but you are the hunter. I mean, you aren't like the enemies are terrifying and they're disturbing and they're gross, but you are the one that's out there hunting them. And it's just an amazing feeling going through. And some of those boss fights in that game are some of the most intense boss fights I've ever had. And overcoming those, I mean, there were extreme challenges going into those. The first fight that you have against the first mandatory boss, Father Gascoigne, I can't tell you how many times I died to that guy, but finally finishing him off was like this huge, just, yeah, exactly. And you're just like jumping up and down on the couch, like controller almost flew out of my hand, you know, and yeah, just a great feeling. And I love the way that From Software games, they really they create these generally, you know, open worlds. Obviously, there's fast travel and whatnot. You can go between points after you find the lamps. But you can run from one location through the next. But all of the locations are very distinct and they're very kind of like levelish.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel you can take it in chunks, even though it's incredibly difficult, and you can work and set yourself a goal. Okay, now I'm gonna work the next lamp. I'm gonna work to the next boss. And Bloodborne did that so well, and it was so much faster. The gameplay was so much faster than Dark Souls 1 and 2, which came before it. And it just really made everything feel so much better, being able to be so much more mobile and jumping around, and I just love it.
Sure. Yeah. All right, Caden, it's your turn because I know you want to talk about this thing as much as Wes does.
Just jumping right off the gameplay. Just that simple mechanic of when you get hit, you have a couple seconds to attack any enemy and regain the health that you lost. And from a design ethos, that's like really similar to me to the gameplay in Doom and Doom Eternal, where you're constantly being incentivized and rewarded to move toward the enemy. And a similar thing's going on in Bloodborne compared to Dark Souls, where you can really, they call it turtling. You're like slowly walking around with a shield and like poking from behind your shield. But they even like throw it in your face at the beginning of the game because one of the first items you find is a shield that's made out of rotted planks, and it's completely useless. And you never find another shield in the entire game. And it's like, yeah, shields are useless in this game. It's like, but. Yeah, besides the gameplay, I mean, I'm a really big H.P. Lovecraft fan, respect the art, not the artist, I guess I should say. I'm a fan of his stories, even though he was a racist asshole in real life. But anyway, I grew up reading that. My dad was really into all this stuff, and horror movies based off of Lovecraft-related things like The Thing, cosmic horror, all that kind of stuff. And even though there are other games that are directly based off of Lovecraft stories, I feel like Bloodborne is the best like Lovecraft / cosmic horror related game that's ever been made. And just soaking in that atmosphere and environment, like if you're a fan of that stuff, it's just phenomenal. And I even feel like the world design is so good that it'll draw in newcomers to that genre. But there's just this whole meta thing going on around Bloodborne that is incredible to me, where in the story you've got this dichotomy between people who want to use this blood of these old gods to transcend their physical form into godhood, but then you have another group of thinkers who feel that that's not the way, and the way is to gain insight, or as the characters say in the game, grant us eyes. So you've got people that are consuming this blood and it's causing them to mutate into beast forms, and then you have other people that are gaining knowledge basically of like the underlying like framework of reality, and that everything's like a dream in the mind of like these old ones. And there's even this conversation you can have with the character who he's kind of like the guy in the hub who supplies you with like weapons in the workshop and stuff. And there's a conversation you can have with him where you go talk to him and he says something along the lines of, like, oh, you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing? Well, just go out there and kill some beasts, because after all, that's what hunters do. So there's this like level in both the narrative and in the player's mind where if all you're there to do is just to kill monsters and overcome the boss fights, that's still an amazing experience. And if that's all you get out of it, then that's great. But then there's this other like layer to both the story and the player's experience where you can, dive into the lore and learn more about the world and figure out why things are the way they are and what's happened and what these creatures are. And I don't know, it's a little bit hard to explain, but like it's just like a phenomenal experience and like a really cool like meta activity going on. But yeah.
There's a lot there, and if you do want to dive into that meta, I mean, you do have to do a lot of digging, and it's not really obvious, but there's a lot of really good lore videos online to watch, and that of people that really kind of give you the info dump and explain it really well. But yeah, it's a really cool story, even though it's not always obvious what's going on while you're playing the game.
Sure.
Which some people might be critical about, but I kind of dig. I will say about Bloodborne, it has some of my favorite enemy designs in any video game ever. Some of the boss designs in that game are just, really super interesting and gross and unique. And specifically in the DLC, I'm thinking to Ludwig.
Yeah. Wow.
That design is just, I mean, he's a monstrosity, but he's so awesome.
I think that's the hardest boss fight in the entire game.
I think Orphan of Kos is probably a little bit harder, but Ludwig is definitely hard. And that DLC is really awesome. It adds so much. It adds so many cool new weapons. And
I think that's one of the best expansions I've ever played in a game. Certainly in the Souls games, it's the best, but overall, just in video games.
Yeah, and I don't want to tarry on it too much longer because I know we have a lot of games to discuss, but people that clamor for a 3D Castlevania game, if you play Cainhurst Castle in Bloodborne, that's like perfection, the closest that you could come for what's available right now, and it's just amazing.
I have one more thing before we move on. Just a testament to the world design and story in that game. My wife, she's also kind of obsessed with horror and Lovecraft and cosmic horror type stuff. So she's extremely attracted to the world of Bloodborne, but she's not really much of a gamer. She does play video games, but only here and there. A game will catch her attention and she gets really attached to it. Something like Bloodborne that's extremely challenging is not really her thing, but she was so interested in it that she's started listening to lore videos on YouTube of people explaining the story and lore of the game just for fun, not even having played the game. That's how good the world design and story is in this game, So just want to throw that out there.
Cool.
Yeah, I have probably 4 or 5 friends that are going through the game right now that either never played it when it first came out or jumped into it, felt a little bit overwhelmed, put it aside, but they're all jumping back in and they're all playing through it right now. And just seeing their posts oh, I just killed the cleric.
I did it.
Oh, I just got the Witches of Hemwick. It's been so just fun and just inspirational seeing them tackling these challenges that they were so intimidated by for so long and jumping in, and they're having a great time with it. And they're like, I can see why people love this game. This is fantastic. And I'm like, oh yeah, you guys, you're just, it warms my heart,
Yep.
Well, I'm glad. I've talked about it many times here on the show, and we're going to keep it positive because this is something I want to do.
I had what I said about Knack. Sorry.
So sorry, Knack. Mark Cerny's a friend of the show. It's fine. He's going to be cool with it. But yeah, I had some memorable moments in there too, and a lot of your stuff rings true with a lot of people who are listening to this, hopefully. So yeah, maybe because I'm not the biggest Souls fan, I'm not going to get into it, but I'm glad that you guys love it, and I respect the fact that you guys still love it to this day. And it still seems to be the one Souls game. We had Sekiro come out later on, but it still seems to be the one besides, even amongst, Dark Souls, the one that people go back to because it seems like it stands out so much and people are just waiting for that sequel. And I really, really think at some point maybe, but it depends on the whole kind of, it can't be cross-platform, or I don't know if Sony actually owns the name and stuff, so maybe that's why they haven't made another one, because as From Software wants to be a company that grows, it's hard to be well, we're pouring tons of money and time into a franchise that can be on one console as opposed to 4. So we'll see. Bloodborne 2 is not impossible though. It's not impossible.
Keep our fingers crossed for sure.
Keep them crossed. Yeah, keep your I was gonna say, keep your switch, not switch axe. That's Monster Hunter. Keep your your trick weapons crossed and all that, whatever. Which speaking about Japan, and this might be a release that was in Japan. I don't know if it was formally here. I think it was back on PlayStation, but this is also 2015. A series that I'm new to. I've only played a little bit of it. I'm talking Yakuza 0, a game the Yakuza franchise making its mark here in the West, along with some other big Japanese franchises. And Yakuza is such a weird, cool thing to get into, but there are so many of those games. It's like, oh my gosh. But I love that Yakuza 0 is kind of like at the beginning of, right now, a little bit of like the timeline, even though there are games that are set hundreds of years, I guess, before even Yakuza 0. But yeah, I've only played a little bit. I don't know what your guys' experience is with the franchise, but that's the one that came out in 2015 and was one I gotta mention.
I've played I've played several Yakuza games, and I really love the franchise. So I was influenced to jump into 0. I'm a big Easy Allies fan.
Sure.
And so Ben Moore and Brad Ellis and Michael Huber over there, listening to those guys just gush about Yakuza, I'm like, okay, I gotta see what this is all about. So I ended up buying 0, and honestly, it's one of my favorite games this generation. It's to the point where I had never played any of the other games before 0, and I now own Yakuza 0 through 6 and the spin-off Judgment. So I ended up buying 8 games, in that franchise, basically, just because that first game really and it does such a great job of getting you in the door, because it is kind of intimidating because there are so many games, but 0, it's basically the first chronologically in the story. It gives a great introduction to the characters and the world. I don't know if you guys have. Well, sounds like you haven't maybe played it, but it's an open world game, but not in the sense of like you're going and really, you're not like going into a lot of buildings, climbing through places. You're basically outside for most of the time, walking around the streets of Kamurocho, which is this fictional city in Japan. But it's all modeled after, a real city. And there's different districts, and you walk around, and the main story of Yakuza is this really kind of hard-boiled, very serious, dramatic gangster story. About in 0 specifically, there's this real estate deal going down, and it's like pivotal to the future of the city. And this one, character the main character gets kind of embroiled in what's going on, and has to protect the real person that's due to inherit this land for this property. And anyway, it's very, very serious and very dramatic. But the great part about Yakuza is all the side content. There's so much to do in that game. There's so many side games you can do. You can play mahjong, you can go bowling, you can play go to the batting cages, there's this whole slot car game that you can play where you can like make your own slot car and put different parts in and swap them out, and there's missions around all of those things that get you money that you can use to like help level your character up and stuff. And then there's the side events, which are just completely off the wall and zany, where you're doing things like helping to catch like a panty thief, or like someone's kid that got like pulled into this cult, and they send you in undercover to the cult, and and there's like a real estate mini game where you're like kind of taking over the city with buying and selling real estate, and a cabaret club mini game. And you can spend as much or as little time doing that stuff as you want to in between the main stories. And it's really a huge amount of content, but it's also fun and so interesting and funny. There's a lot of humor in those games, some of the best humor in any game that I've ever played, and I just loved it. So I went from that, and I jumped into Kiwami 1 and went from there into Kiwami 2, and it's a great time.
That's
Wow.
cool. I was say, Caden, what's your kind of history with it, if any?
Yeah, so I've never played any of them, but yeah, just I also consume a lot of the Easy Allies, so I've gotten a lot of, you know, uh,
Through osmosis.
yeah, osmo. I don't know what the verb for that is, but anyway, I don't think I can think of another fan base that is so like excited for the games and like universally. It's like almost anyone I hear that has played Yakuza just universally is extremely ecstatic about it and like loves it with like every fiber of their being. So it's like if you bother to play the game, it seems like it's going to sink its hooks into you. I'm always hesitant to play games like that because I just prefer more like fantasy or sci-fi, like less of like a realistic setting. But yeah, I've got nothing but respect for the game, and
So
um,
your chance is coming up because Yakuza 7 is coming out next month, and
yes,
that is playing completely different than the other
I'm
games.
very interested in this one because it's a standalone story and it's turn-based, so this might be the one to jump in on.
Yeah,
But
and the main character basically like fantasizes the whole time, his whole way through it, into like thinking he's like a Dragon Quest character or something like
right,
that. It
I've
looks
seen
so off the wall.
they're just doing crazy stuff with the abilities. Like you have an ability to like summon like an orbital like satellite laser to like vaporize your enemies in turn-based combat, and it's just like it's a Yakuza gang member just fighting street thugs or whatever, but here comes an orbital laser.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I recently there's somewhere I heard someone, I think it might have been in like the community showcase for Easy Allies or something. Someone had said that they this year had started the Yakuza series and they were so hooked by it they literally played the entire series 0 through 6 back to back.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, like
Yeah.
it must really be good to be able to do that. I can't imagine doing that with like any other series really.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll say, Wes, I think you said it best. It's a game that, straddles this weird line or does these kind of knee-jerk changes between super serious but then really jokey, and somehow it works. It really plays well. And I don't know if that's like kind of Japanese games a little bit more because like, American or Western games don't really do that as much or as deftly. But for some odd reason, Kiryu, you're like, this guy's so serious, but then he's like doing karaoke, and you're like, you're doing it, man. You're like, it's a good game. It's good, and I want to get into it more.
The humor is very hokey, but it's like very, it's almost like self-aware in that way. It's like you kind of know what you're getting going into it, and Kiryu's just kind of like along for the ride. He's kind of like just a good guy, even though he's like was working for the mob or whatever. He's got like a heart of gold.
Yeah.
And so he just like ends up going along for all of this stuff, that he gets caught up in. And the really cool thing about, there's two cool things that I really appreciate about Yakuza. I've never been to Japan, but if I ever wanted to feel like I went to Japan, I would play Yakuza because it is, as close to an experience about walking through a mainline city in Japan as you can get. A lot of the stores that you can go into are real stores.
Oh, wow.
Like Don Quixote and some of the others, restaurants and stuff there that you can go into. I also really love the fact that before this generation, Yakuza games have been coming out. I think Yakuza 1 through 5. Like, I think it started on PlayStation 1 or it might have been 2. I don't remember. But, ended up 5, I think, came out on PS2. I think it was digital only. And the series never really got a lot of traction. But starting with 0, for some reason, that title really sucked in a lot of people.
Yeah. And
it really got people interested in this series that previously, was kind of a niche thing. Mm-hmm. To the point where now it's I'd still say it's probably niche, but it's very much more well known, and very much more respected now than it was in the last 10 years that it's been out, which is really cool.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and we'll talk about another franchise or two soon where that's kind of the same case, which is crazy. It's like these Japanese developers are like, yep, we've been making these games for like more than a decade, and I'm glad you finally showed up. Thank you. Speaking of a game franchise that's been around for not maybe as long as that, but one that did come up next, because we should probably move on. In 2016, though, a game I feel bad I haven't played yet. I'm so sorry, but that is Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Oh my gosh, grapple hooks. Am I right, baby?
Yeah.
Grapple hooks. All right, so, gentlemen, I'm going to start, Caden, with you this time. Uncharted 4, like where do you sit? Where do you sit with this one?
So this is another game I haven't played, and I think that's because I came late to Uncharted. I think like Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 were all out before I started playing the series, and I think I probably just got the collection that was Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. I can't remember if that was on PS3 or if they ported that collection to PS4.
They do. I've got it on PS4. Yeah.
Yeah. So I played through those 3 games back to back pretty much, and I think I just really did not enjoy the 3rd game. I think I had an issue with the narrative, because what was interesting to me in the first 2 games is that there was like actually like an element of supernaturalness going on, like with the weird like Nazi zombie monsters, and then you have like the immortal people with like the tree sap in the second game, and that was something I was just expecting out of the 3rd game, and then they've got this whole thing where you're fighting these like jinn, and it turns out the whole thing's just a hallucination from like a drug in this water, and none of it was real. And I was like, well, that's kind of lame. And I had like kind of a similar issue with like the more recent Tomb Raider games, or like the original trilogy on PS1 have like a lot of supernatural shit going on, and they just like downplay that. And I don't know, I think I must have just got burnt out on Uncharted, but so I never had any interest in playing Uncharted 4, but I've definitely seen a lot of it and heard a lot of people talking about it, and it seems like they did a lot of really cool stuff with the game design that kind of makes me more interested to try it out if I ever make the time. Like this sort of semi-open world environment that like lets you kind of tackle puzzles in like the order you want. And even from a game design perspective with the puzzles, apparently I've heard that the challenge level of the puzzles actually is modular depending on what order you do them. So cool. If you do them, like each one of the puzzles has like basically like an easy, a medium, and hard version of it. So no matter what order you do it in, you have like this like increasing challenge. So that does seem really cool. And I've definitely only heard good things about the game. So
sure. Wes, how about you? Where do you sit?
Uncharted 4 is my favorite Uncharted game.
Wow, here we go. Yes.
I think, though, that the reason it's my favorite is because I have played the other games. I think if you were to jump into Uncharted 4 without having played at least, Uncharted 2 and maybe 3, it doesn't mean as much. And that just comes from the story. Because the story does such a great job of basically wrapping up Drake's story and everything that's come before in the other games. It really focuses in on his relationship with Elena. And it obviously introduces a new character into the game, Sam, his brother, who the series hadn't mentioned at all before, but it tells you why. It goes into that. And the way that everything wraps up, the difficulties and the personal relationship between Drake and Elena and Sam and Sully and Chloe and all the other characters that have been in the series, it just wraps up so well. And the epilogue of the game especially was just really endearing and heartwarming. It basically jumps forward a number of years, and I won't spoil it, but it's very good. I thought that the gameplay in 4 was probably the best and most fun that I've had in the series. The shooting felt tighter, and I know that Naughty Dog gets a lot of crap about the shooting in Uncharted, that it's not good. I personally don't mind it. I kind of like it, but it was definitely fun. You mentioned the grappling hook earlier. I think that was a great add with the gameplay. Uncharted is very run and gun. What the way that I play it, and so being able to like jump off a cliff, grapple, swing, jump down, slam a dude in the face, knock him out, hide in some bushes. There was a lot of good stealth elements that they added in here where you could hide, sneak up on characters. I thought that was really well done. And I like the way that they incorporated some more open world elements. There's some very large open spaces that you can drive around and do some side objectives in, solving some of the puzzles, where you're cruising around in a Jeep and whatnot. And I like the way that they did that too. And I think it was just a really well told story that really wrapped up the legacy of the series. The lost legacy, if you will.
You did it. Well done.
Yeah. And I like the new characters that they added. I like Sam. He was very likable. And Nadine Ross also was a good character, obviously, that appeared in Lost Legacy. So yeah, overall, I thought Uncharted 4 was great. I mean, it's just a super fun game to play. The story's good, and the only thing I didn't really like about it was the villain.
Okay.
But that's a nitpick,
Sure. So. Uncharted's never necessarily been known for having super duper strong villains. Like, I think 3 might have been one of their more interesting ones, but the other ones are kind of just
I literally can't remember any of them.
Yeah, they're not. The one thing I like about the one from 2, the one with like the tree sap guy, he says, like, when Drake gets up there, it's that ludonarrative dissonance, and he calls him on it. He's like, how many people did you kill on the way up here to get me? He's like, and I was like, oh, you're so right. I've killed so many. And Drake's like, he's like, it's a good dude. But the game also, because it's like T for the most part, it's like not as like graphic, as some of the other games that Naughty Dog is known for now. But I got to circle back to that one eventually, because that's a game that I'd be much more inclined to pay. I'm sure it was totally worth the full price, but for me, I'm like, I'd rather pay like $20 to come to it years later and just kind of play it once and be done and be like, yeah, you did it. So, and
Lost Legacy is also very good.
Yes.
So if you don't want to jump into Uncharted 4 and want something a little more bite-sized, I think Lost Legacy is great too. That's my probably second favorite Uncharted game.
Yeah, nice. Chloe, man. Never enough Chloe, man. I just feel like she could be her own her own Uncharted like trilogy. I really like
I hope
Chloe,
I hope that they move, if they do move forward with Uncharted, I think that would be a great direction to take it.
Yeah, take nice. Chloe, do it. Well, now we get to move to something a little more, I don't know if I call it divisive, a game that was either your game of the year or one that you just didn't want to talk about, which was 2016's The Last Guardian. And for people who don't know, The Last Guardian from Team Eco, however you want to say it, a kind of a legendary group now, known mostly for their second game, The Shadow of the Colossus. And now we come back to this kind of interesting art style that they're known for, and you play as like a little boy who has this big kind of dog / griffin / monster friend that you're kind of trying to traverse the world with. And I know that you guys, when I brought this one up, you're like, oh, we should talk about The Last Guardian, because it was appearing as a lot of like game of the year for a lot of people, and some other people are like, this is not good at all. So I'm really curious. Wes, I want to start with you on this one. What was it about The Last Guardian that is maybe memorable to you?
Well, the good with the bad.
Either.
I'll start with the good, because I like to be positive.
Yeah.
But I thought that the relationship between the boy and Trico, the bird dog, or Griffin, or whatever it is, I thought that was very endearing and very well done. It's the way that they help each other through the world, I thought was really great. Obviously, I remember the music was very good, and the world was interesting that they created. But oh boy, that gameplay! I rarely drop a game if I start a game, and I dropped The Last Guardian. I could not. I think I got maybe 3 or 4 hours into that game, and I just couldn't. It was really frustrating. You obviously you don't have direct control over the Griffin, over Trico, and so you're basically suggesting that he, do things, trying to call him over, and then the AI is supposed to react in a way that, you know, is helpful in the situation that you're in. But more times than not, either it just didn't listen at all, or it didn't do the thing that it was supposed to do. Like, it's like staring you straight at the face. Okay, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do here. I'm standing where I'm supposed to stand at. I'm hitting the button to call Trico over, and it's just not working. And
Okay.
I just got so frustrated with it that I couldn't move forward. It wasn't worth it. It was making me tear out, you know, sort of few hairs left on my head. So I had to unfortunately shelve that one. So,
well, you heard it here first, folks. He's calling The Last Guardian, "Hey, you Pikachu 2.0." So just yelling these commands at Trico. You're like, "Get over here." Trico's just kind of looking around. You're like, "Get over here."
Where's my scorpion spear?
Dude, exactly. Yeah.
Get over here.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Kate, how about you, man? I was going to say, it sounds like you kind of have some love for this, maybe.
Yeah, I do. Which probably has more to do with my love for Eco and Shadow of the Colossus than Last Guardian. But yeah, the controls in this game. There's also just like a really obtuse method of interacting with Trico. Like, you can make your character do these strange, like, actions. Like, there's one where he just stands in place and like stamps his feet. There's one where you like point. There's one where you just like jump. And it's like the game never explicitly tells you what exactly it is that those actions are supposed to be telling Trico to do. So even by the end of the game, there's still this element of you not even being really sure how to tell Trico what you want it to do.
Excellent.
But I'd almost like recommend anyone who's interested in this game just to watch a full playthrough instead of playing it yourself, because similarly to the Souls games, I think there's a lot of parallels between the storytelling style in the Souls games and The Last Guardian, where the world is extremely interesting to me anyway, and it does not like really explicitly tell you what's going on, and you have to kind of draw your own conclusion from context clues like in the Souls games. And I don't know, that's just like a style of storytelling that I find really addictive. It just like spurs me to dig more into the game world. But the worlds that Team Eco created are they just feel so unlike anything else in any other game. It's such a unique feeling environment and world, and like even the architecture. And there's this element of like that the games may be tied together in some way, and the fans debate about that. And even for US, I'd recommend like watching the rest of the game, because where it goes is so interesting and bizarre. You essentially like find this ancient structure. You don't know if it's alien or if it's like ancient civilization or what, and it's actually like seemingly genetically designed and created the Trico creatures, and the Tricos are going out into the world and kidnapping humans and using them as an energy source to feed to this ancient structure. There's like this I think they call it the Master in the game, and it's this inhuman, like spherical being. You almost get the sense that it's some kind of like ancient or alien, like supercomputer, self-aware AI thing. And like the point of the Tricos is they go out to turn humans into an energy source for it. And like it's just like, there's like this room in the tower where there's what appears to be a humanoid sarcophagus, except for it's like gigantic. It's like whatever being inside of it would be like 50 feet tall or something. And like your brain's just like racing with all these like ideas and theories about what's going on. And that kind of stuff just really draws me in and I find fascinating. And also, I think you'll appreciate it, anyone who's listening, if you're a fan of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, either the manga or the anime, because there's some extremely obvious like parallels and inspiration to some events that happen in Nausicaa. And
does Trico turn into a giant bug?
No, it doesn't have to be great though. But yeah, it's frustrating because I think like the world and like the world building and the story are just phenomenal and really draw you in, and then you're just let down by the gameplay because I also it's frustrating to think about too because what they managed to accomplish with Trico, I think, is in a way praiseworthy because it really did feel like he's an animal and you're trying to figure out how to get this animal to understand what it is you want it to do, which from a technological standpoint is an amazing thing, but from a gameplay standpoint, it's a horrible thing because that just makes bad gameplay. But I felt like I knew who Trico was. Like I had this like relationship with Trico by the end of the game, and it's just kind of a funny thing because in real life, difficulties and misunderstandings are like part of building a relationship. But yeah, it makes a bad game. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, people. Watch a playthrough.
I that does sound super compelling though, and I didn't get far enough into the game to get to that. All of that sounds like really cool stuff. So knowing that now, yeah, definitely, I might go back and check that out.
Oh, I'd like to give a shout out to a YouTuber. I think his name is Max Derrett, and that's just the name of his YouTube channel. It's spelled like Derrat. He does these fantastic lore analysis videos of games with notoriously esoteric lore like Silent Hill or the Team Eco games, and he has some really amazing videos on The Last Guardian. So if you played the game and you're curious about that kind of thing, I'd recommend Max Derrett's YouTube channel.
All right. Cool. Well, there you go. Last Guardian, great and also horrible. Yeah, I was gonna say, for people who are listening to this, a lot of people who are like Caden and like kind of diving and trying to find more lore. I'm the exact opposite type of person. I usually hate having like extra homework to do, and they're like, you have to watch 3 hours of lore videos to understand this. I'm like, why do I have to do? Like, it's like, hey, you're in Yarnum. Do you know why it's so sad here? And I'm like, no, but I don't want to. I'm just like, I gotta get out of here. But I respect the fact that you love that. And it makes you want to learn more. Usually I see stuff like that in games, so I'm like, I bet there's a story about that, and then I just like I'm like, well, gotta keep going. So but yeah, Last Guardian is such a weird game, and it came out and it was like during an interesting year too, where a lot of people, like I said, it was like either it was the best of the best, or people were like, I don't want to deal with it. It was just that last level where you play as Trico and try to get the little boy to do what you want him to do. I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that have been great? Oh my gosh, people would have like,
that would have been good.
This next one, though, I do want to bring up because this was one I think, Caden, you said this is the beginning of 2017, going into a new year here. Gravity Rush 2, which I played the demo of, and I thought this game is nuts because basically I was like, oh, it's a third-person action game, and then you'd hit a button and your person would fly through the air like feet first, and I was like, and it would take you like across this huge like open sky map with all these little kind of like there was like a cafe and stuff. I was like, what's happening here? So I know you said you wanted to talk a little bit about Gravity Rush 2, so here's your chance to do so.
I just think that Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2 are some of the like most criminally underrated games out there, and first of all,
agree.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal that we even got a Gravity Rush 2, and I came really late to Gravity Rush. I only learned about it after they ported it to PS4. I probably just saw it on like PSN or something and was like, oh, what is this? And started researching it. And it's one of those games where it's like nobody's played it, but everybody who's played it is like, this is the greatest thing ever. So I decided to give the original Gravity Rush a shot. And firstly, that's an amazing port. It's like one of the like most high quality ports I've ever played. They just did a really amazing job porting it because the original game was on the PS Vita, or PSP. Yeah. And they just did a really good job making it feel like, a PS4 game. It wasn't just like a straight port. They kind of like redid some of the like graphics rendering and all that kind of stuff. But for that game and Gravity Rush 2, it's just another game that I feel like provides an experience that you can't find anywhere else. So like you said, Jimmy, the world, it's this huge open world, but the entire world is composed of floating islands. And the main character's ability is that she can change gravity, but only in relation to herself. So she essentially can fly by making gravity like up instead of down, and then you just start falling up. And it's just like essentially you're just flying, and it's like how many games have let you fly in an open world? But putting that twist on it, it makes it feel so fresh and unique. And just the moment-to-moment gameplay of flying by falling to get around is so addictive and freeing. And like this is something I'd say about Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4. Just the act of traversing the environment is a joy in that game. Like that's another game that I'd never used fast travel in because it's so fun just to traverse. And that game, everything about it just feels unique. It's like the main gameplay hook is unique, the world is unique, the story is unique, the enemies are unique, and it also has both games have a phenomenal soundtrack. Like you should just listen to the soundtrack to Gravity Rush 1 and 2. And I don't know what else to say. Like you need to play Gravity Rush 1 and 2. Like they're phenomenal. Like easy 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I don't know.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. Well now Wes, sounds like you're kind of reverberating this, or it resonates with you as well.
Yeah, I love Gravity Rush, and I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, they are really, really underplayed. And honestly, Caden did a really good job of kind of wrapping up kind of my feelings on the game as well. I mean, the traversal system is, like he said, wholly unique. It does take some time to get used to it. I think the game does a pretty good job of easing you in. But it's not like when you're falling, you don't have like directional control. You start falling and basically, excuse me, you have to basically suspend gravity for yourself again. So you'll be falling. You can hit the button anytime to make Kat, the main character, kind of like stop and float and reorient the camera, and then hit the button again and she'll start falling in a different direction. So you're not like, it's not really like true flight. It is you are falling. But they do a lot with the combat in that game too, which is surprisingly good, where you basically like just fall super fast into enemies to like hit them harder. The enemies are all pretty cool looking, like sludge eye monsters. There's a lot of other cool characters in the game. Raven, who is kind of like Kat's counterpart, who can do kind of similar stuff to her. It's a very cool, if you like anime, it's got a very cool anime aesthetic. And as a matter of fact, I've always thought, like, if you're going to take a video game and turn it into an anime, there's no better video game for that than Gravity Rush, because it's just the designs are great. The story would work so well for that. The powers are cool. They work so well for that. And a lot of the cutscenes are in a very kind of anime style, which is very neat. It's a great game, and it's unfortunate that more people haven't tried it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still out there, but there was a demo for Gravity Rush 2 out there for a bit, so you should try to find that if you can. Another way I would kind of describe it too is like you're kind of like a magnet almost, where it's kind of like you're almost pulling yourself towards things. So, but if you just watch a video for it too for just a second, you'll be like, wow, there's nothing else quite like it. Even I can understand that. I'm like, yeah, Definitely. This is cool. This is nuts. And 2017 was just the beginning of not necessarily one of the greatest years of video game history, but the start of some other insane things, and that is the start of one of the two games that made me get a PlayStation 4, and that is one game with a weird title, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes.
Everybody remembers it. You know, it's the one where you're shooting robot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow. Seems like a good idea. Yeah, there's more to it than that, but I don't know about you guys. That's a game that still resonates with me. Don't ask me what the story was, because I don't remember. There's a lot of audio logs, and I feel, because there's like people out there who are like, it's a great story. I'm like, I don't remember. I just remember Aloy, and she wanted to figure out what happened to the world. But the fighting, the combat in that game is the one thing I think that, and we'll probably talk a little bit about it later, but it came out about a month, was it before Breath of the Wild or something like that? And I think that's it's the one thing that it really has as a strength, and maybe the story a little bit over Breath of the Wild, but just like to fight and to rip apart these dinosaurs or these other animals that are robots, and to have all these cool like little things, like where you get like these kind of harpoons where you stick them into them and pin them to the ground, and you're like trying to harvest stuff from them to make yourself stronger. I thought it was such a fascinating game. and I just still like wish for my caveman like heart wants like co-op to be like, let's take down a mammoth robot together, everybody. But it's an intimidating game because that Thunderjaw, the big T-Rex that they showed off so long ago, is still such a crazy fight. No matter when you run into these things, even when you're kitted up in that game, because like you're a person, you're a young woman who has like some armaments and some armor, but you're getting hit by like a crocodile with a robotic tail. Like you're gonna it's gonna do damage to you. And I just remember really liking it. All I want them to do is just make the spear combat a little better, because I've always felt like it wasn't. I was like, yeah, you do it as a last resort to be like, get away from me. But it's just such a fun game, and just the whole world. It was so crazy big. I kept like, you're going to different biomes and stuff. You're like in the desert for a while, and I was like, what the heck? Like, and you're just running on foot or on your little ram or whatever. But I just was like, this is from a group that started off and had been for a long time doing first-person shooters. Killzone, like Guerrilla was like, we're doing something new, and I think they knocked it out of the park. Even if some of the like the spear stuff or the climbing isn't as good as I want it to be, or maybe the story wasn't as compelling, I still think it's really cool, and I still think it's one of the games that stands out in this generation a lot. Now, I'll start with Wes here. Wes, Horizon Zero Dawn, do you have love for it? Have you played it? How do you feel?
Horizon was actually my GOTY for 2017.
Yeah, here we go.
And I know that's like not a popular opinion in the same year that Breath of the Wild came out.
Whatever, man.
Yeah, who cares? It's your opinion. It's how you feel in your heart, baby. Like...
But I loved the combat in that game so much. I mean, I love archery. Overall, I do archery in real life. I've got a compound bow that I take out and practice with. So it kind of spoke to me a lot. I just love the enemy designs in that game. Like you were saying, the ability to, I think we're all fans of Monster Hunter here. But one of the things I love about Monster Hunter that I also love about Horizon is when you are damaging the enemies, you can visually see the damage on the enemies. You knock pieces of armor loose on them and hit them, and you can see the damage that you're doing. So when you're fighting that Thunderjaw, you shoot like a shock arrow on them or something like that, and it blows up, and the armor pieces just go flying, and you expose these kind of weak spots on them that you can then take advantage of. And I really loved that about the game. It was a beautiful game.
Oh, gorgeous.
I think it was the Decima engine.
Yep.
That absolutely gorgeous. It was reused in this year's Ghost of Tsushima. No, sorry, not Ghost of Tsushima. It was reused in Death Stranding. My mistake. Sorry. So yeah, great looking game. I love the way it played. I love the environments. Aloy, I thought was an awesome character, very strong-willed character. And I think Ashley Birch did a great job voicing her.
Yeah.
And I thought the story was really cool. I really enjoyed digging into that. I know you said you don't remember what happened, but I'm really interested to see where it was a complex story, and I don't remember a lot of it either. But I do remember. I do remember some of the stuff that happened, and it was some really cool sci-fi lore that I think is holds up.
Yeah,
for sure. And I'm really interested to see where they take it in Forbidden West.
Yeah, totally. Caden, how about you?
Just from the story perspective, it's funny, because you said you literally just didn't pay attention to the story at all. But
I tried. I was like, it's so long. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired.
I feel like it has a really compelling story that has a lot of depth to it, and more than anything, the game, it sets up this mystery box, right, of like what happened to human civilization that got us to this point. And so many stories go wrong with setting up a mystery box like this and letting the players create their own theories about why is this happening, what's, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, and then completely utterly failing to stick the landing, like something like Lost or something like that. But I feel like Horizon does a fantastic job actually creating an interesting cause to why the world's the way it is, and has a really great payoff if you're paying attention to the story. And besides that, just touching on the combat again. I feel like a common theme with all these games we're talking about is just there's like something about it that you really can't experience in any other game, and I really do feel like the combat feels that way in Horizon. And I mean, just like the amount of ways that you can approach certain fights, the amounts of things that can happen is so dynamic that it's insane. Like taking that Thunderjaw fight. What's crazy about the Thunderjaw is it has armaments built into its body that it fights you with, and you actually have the ability to blow off the weapons that it's using to fight you with and then pick them up and start shooting that at the creature. So what's crazy is just how that I've got Monster Hunter rolling around in my head right now, but there's similarities there because you have these intense, drawn out, high stakes fights with these creatures similar to Monster Hunter. And there are some things that I feel like Horizon does better than Monster Hunter, like the interactivity with the actual creature, like Wes was saying, being able to literally break off pieces of its chassis and exposing weak points on its insides, or blowing off weapons to use against it. Just the amount of dynamism and interactivity with the actual enemies is just crazy, and the variety, like every single one of the creatures in that game is memorable and fights differently. And but how they expanded on it with the new creatures in the DLC, even another game, fantastic DLC. Yeah, and sometimes you see this game on sale for like $10 or $15 bundled in with the DLC. Like you got to pick it up. Like,
and it's doable for an open world game. Horizon Zero Dawn was my first platinum trophy.
Same.
I mean, and just because it's fun to explore, and it doesn't have so much content in it that it's so overwhelming to do. Right? I mean, it's a 50-hour action RPG that you can go into and complete and do the whole thing and see everything, and I really appreciate that about it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Stormbird. I like the Stormbird too.
Yeah.
The Snap Maw.
That's
or whatever.
Also a really cool fight.
I was trying to remember because I think I was like kind of going through back in like the lore, and I remember thinking parts of it were interesting. I know the part where I checked out. It's when we get to the inner politics of like the Sun King or whatever.
Sure.
That I was like, what is? I'm trying to figure out what happened to the world, and it was like, we've got a lot of problems in our fancy desert kingdom, and I'm like, you guys get out of here. I was like, I've been taking on gigantic robot dinosaurs by myself, and they're like, oh, also the human enemies, which there are in this game, they feel so much like just throwaway by comparison, because you're like, these warring tribes, and you're like shooting them in the face, and you're like, I'm kind of waiting for like I wanted one to come out like in a mech suit or something kind of more compelling, because the way you fight them is very just like you got to kind of stealth around and just kind of pop them in the head and just kind of.
It's like the opposite of fighting the machines, and it's just so boring.
The human combat was not great in that game.
Yeah, I was just like, please, can I get back to just like fighting these crazy creatures? Because like you said, in the DLC, it's like, hey, it's a robot bear, and it's like, oh my god, and it's like, man, it's just such a cool game, and I'm excited to see what they do with the next one. I'm hoping that because it's going to be cross-platform, it'll be a little compromised, but I hope it's not completely, because I can't wait to see that game, but I also can't wait to see, they'll probably make it in a trilogy, what that like unhindered, if they could just be like, you can do whatever, like make a crazy creature that you can't even, you're like looking at it, you're like, I don't even know what that is, like tendrils, robotic tendrils and stuff. You're like,
It seems like in the next game they're gonna let you do more with the exploration. Like you could kind of go where you wanted in Horizon Zero Dawn, but it was kind of like it had that kind of Uncharted-esque traversal where, there's a point there, I can climb up right at that spot where the ledge has a little bit of like gray outline or whatever. But it showed Aloy like swimming underwater with kind of a rebreather apparatus. So it seems like maybe they're gonna let you do more exploration underwater. And I really hope that it takes a cue from Breath of the Wild and will allow you to do some sort of a like gliding or aerial traversal, because I think that would go a long way to help that game. Obviously, you could tame the machines and jump on a machine and ride it across the landscape. But getting from one place up to the next, if you had to, you wanted to, oh, what's up on top of that mountain? It's like, well, I don't know if I can actually get there if there's no, it looks really nice, but there's no little climbable ledge for me to get up there.
Very much so. Yeah, I was going to say one last thing about this. Obviously, some Assassin's Creed inspirations, but they're like, you know what? Towers, we'll call them tall necks and they'll be moving around. And there's also some armor down here that you're going to have to work for really hard. And you're like, I want that. And there's Aloy's like, I can't get it right now. I'm like, just take one of your super arrows and blow it up. And it was like, no. It's safe. It's got 6-inch acrylic glass. But yeah, a great game. Unfortunate. As I said, like, it's unfortunate, even though it wasn't exclusive and Breath of the Wild's exclusive, that it came out around the same time as Breath of the Wild, and there's so many comparisons drawn to it. Both are great, so just like keep that in mind. If you get to see this especially on PC now, the fact that it's on PC, like, just grab it. Like, you'll play it and you'll be like, oh yeah, like when you're just hunting down those crab things, like those little crab robots that have a ton of supplies on them. You're like
the boxes.
You're like, I'm coming to get you, and you're like, there's like 2 or 3 of them, and you're like setting up all these traps, which I tried a lot to do, like, the cool traps. I'm like, I see, like, a herd of these things. I'm like, all right, so I'll put these traps over to the right, and I'll scare them from the left, and then they would just go north. And I was like, oh, guys, I'm like, come back. But yeah, it's such a cool game. Such a cool game. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, it's turned into the Horizon Zero Dawn podcast. In 2017, also, another game, speaking about anime before with Gravity Rush 2, I think there's another one here that this is, like, almost anime embodied. We're talking Persona 5. Which I had my time with it. I don't know if I was like a 90 hours or 100 hours to get through that game. It took a long time. But a really cool game, even though it is, we're talking compromised. This one was a bit compromised because it had to come out on PS3 as well. So the kind of like the mechanics outside of combat weren't like, there wasn't a lot going on. It was a lot of like walking down a hallway or jumping in between things or just talking to people. There's a lot of like pressing X in this game, like a lot. But the story is so good. I think all the characters are really interesting. You really bond with them. And the combat for turnstile base, I remember telling a friend about this because turnstile base, I don't know if you guys have friends this way who are like so turned off to it. They're like, I can't do turn based.
Yeah.
This combat is like, you can get done with combat encounters in seconds if you know what you're doing. You're like, you can get in, and if you know the weaknesses, you can be like, boom, 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 and you're like threatening somebody, like you're just all pulling guns on a demon, and you're like, all right, you're coming with us, kind of thing. But it just stands out to me. And you guys were talking about music earlier too. That's maybe some of my favorite music of this whole generation. I still go back and listen to it. I think it's so killer. It is so good.
It has a great OST, and that's one of the hallmarks of Persona, I think. Like almost all of them do. It's really great.
Yeah, I'll say, Wes will tell me about it. Your Persona 5. Have you had
I've had a tumultuous relationship with Persona.
Let's hear it.
I've tried that game several times, and I've always kind of hit a wall with it, not too far into it. And I get really this is just a personal issue, but I get really I get kind of like have problems with making decisions. I get I'm so indecisive. So when you throw a game at me and you say, okay, you've got a limited amount of time, pick what you want to do. You can only hang out with one of these 3 characters. I'm like, no, I want to see everybody's storyline. I want to know exactly what's going to happen. I want to know exactly what I'm going to get from this guy versus this guy versus this guy. So I get that kind of analysis paralysis. And I think that was kind of my always been my issue with Persona 5. That said, I did pick up Royal, and I've been told that there's a lot of streamlining in that game and a lot of like quality of life improvements that were made in that game. And so I'm looking forward to jumping into that. And I've been told it's kind of like the superior version, generally speaking. So I am looking forward to jumping back into that. I will totally agree with you, Jimmy, when you said like the music is top tier. Oh. It's fantastic. I love the visuals in that game. I love the character designs and the voices and the just the overall aesthetic. It's just so good. Everything from the menus
and the menus.
the victory screen, everything. It's just so good.
Yeah, the super finishers and stuff. And you were talking about Yakuza earlier and like how you enjoy like or the thought of going to Japan. This is the game that like to me has that like if I was on a crowded subway in Japan or if I'm walking around Tokyo, like this is that game, right? To have like those little chunks in it.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah, so I hope you can get back to it. I hope you can go back.
Me too. I really would like to get back to it. And I think you and I have talked about it before, but I would love for Persona 5, even the original version to come out on Switch. I think that would be amazing.
I can't, like if it runs on PS3, it can run on Switch. What's the holdup?
It can. Like, it has to, right?
Yeah, because then I could take it with me and I could play an hour on my lunch break.
It'd be perfect for that.
Or whatever. Or if I'm traveling, I travel for work sometimes. Take it with me and play it. That's how I ended up playing Three Houses.
Dude,
I took it with me. It's great for on the go, and it seems like it's just set up. It's just ripe for putting it on there. They put Joker and Smash, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
So why not? Where's this Persona 5 port?
Exactly. Yeah. So Caden, you seem like you know a little Persona.
I have a similar tumultuous relationship. To my wife, if she's listening, this doesn't reflect poorly on you, hon. It's just a thing that happened. So anyway, when Persona 5 came out, it was like the new hotness. Like everyone was like going crazy for this game, and it had such a presence in the zeitgeist that it even came into my wife's sphere of awareness, and she just saw the game and was like, this game looks amazing, like I want to play this, which is a rare and awesome occurrence for her, because she just like maybe like once a year, once every 2 years, she plays like one game and gets like super attached to it. And so I bought the game, we started playing it, and we were like playing through it together. I think we played like, it was a long time. It was about like 30 hours or something.
Dang.
And she just never managed to get to the end of the first palace. And she just got burnt out. And she just was like, I don't want to play it anymore. And so that just kind of like marred my experience with the game, where I was like, oh, okay, so we're just stopping playing it now. So I never continued the game. And then like Royal came out and I was like, well, I have the original game, but now I don't feel like playing it because there's a better version of it out. And I think Royal went on sale a couple of weeks ago for like $40, and I was like, screw it, I want to pick it up. So it blows my mind with games like this and like Dragon Quest 11, where they just don't make the new content an expansion you can purchase if you already have the game. Like you literally have to buy the same game over again, full price, if you want the extra content. But I enjoyed what I played of it, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to it. I'm not planning to be able to get a PS5 for like at least probably like a year until after it comes out. So I've got this like hit list of like games I missed this generation, and like Persona 5 is like right at the top of that. But yeah, just the game just exudes style, and I think it's even worth pointing out that wasn't necessarily something that the series is known for. Persona 4 Golden just got ported to Steam, and I started playing a little bit of that. And it doesn't really have the same kind of like design sensibility that Persona 5 has. It has a weird like chibi art style with like strangely realistic textures on stuff. And
weird.
I don't know what happened. They just started firing on like all cylinders, like 110% in like the art department for Persona 5. Like it's just such a stylish game, like visually and audibly.
Persona 4 was originally a PlayStation 2 game, so
okay.
I think there was only so much they could do with the tech at the time that Persona 4 came out, and so then Golden was the kind of enhanced, perfect version.
Sure. So that means Persona 6 will probably be a PS Vita exclusive, but then will get ported to some other things. So it's just like, come on. Like I'm excited to see
Vita 2, you've heard it here, folks.
Exactly. I would love to see this franchise again not be compromised in any way, just to see what they can really do with it now, especially that it's kind of broken into the West a little bit more. But Yeah, crazy, just a crazy cool game. We never
Did
saw it
you
coming.
did you play Royal, Jimmy? Have you played that
I
yet?
haven't. No, no, no. I have not at all. No. Is it?
Are you planning on going in and seeing
I
that extra content?
I'm not sure because I missed out on plenty of it because you talked about that analysis paralysis. Like there was a lot in the game that I never got into. One of those things was a companion quest for a character that was supposed to be a main character. She's like the chess or shogi player, and she didn't make it as a main character in the game, but she's a companion character, which allows you to switch your characters out during combat, like if they faint and stuff, or if they're about
Okay.
to. I never
Uh-huh.
had that, so I had like my team of 4 that I always had because of like my choices. So there's still stuff in the original that I didn't do, and then they're like, "Hey, Royal's out now," and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can go back in. Like
Yeah.
it took me forever to play it in the first place to get a review out
The
on it.
the
But
nice thing about Royal, and I don't know if this necessarily means you can see everything, but the platinum trophy for that you can do in one run.
oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah. So whether that means seeing everything or not, I don't know, but I do know that you can do at least get all the trophies in one sitting.
That's nice. I will be honest with you boys. I turned off trophies a long time ago because as someone who captures video for review, every flippin' thing you do is a trophy. It like pops up a little thing. It's like, congratulations, you beat the second boss. And I'm like, I know. And it's like a story moment, but like the Xbox or the PlayStation's like, hey, you did it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
shut up. But I know people love their trophies, and that's good that you could do that because this game is so long and arduous, and I would hate for people to be like, I missed these 2 things and I have to go back and play another 80 hours to get these trophies. It's like, that's crushing. So I'm glad Royale has streamlined it, which is good because it kind of is trying to streamline RPGs, right?
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out on howlongtobeat.com, Persona 5 for just the main story out of 2,000 poll, like a poll of 2,000 people, the average time to beat just the main story is 97 hours.
Yep, I was gonna say that was pretty much mine, and I got to the end of it and I was like, oh my gosh,
There's more?
There's more.
There's extras?
Yeah, I'm like, oh gosh. But yeah, by the way, when you mentioned the whole like rebuying the game, that reminds me of like Destiny, like what they do a year later. You'd be like,
Yep.
it'd be like, it's Destiny again, but the expansions and stuff, but you have to rebuy the game to play it. I'm
Yeah.
like, but I already got. Okay. But anyway, that's 2017 for Sony for the most part. Again, we'll probably miss things. I'm so sorry, but there's so many big games. Speaking of a little known game, it's from a trilogy of games. Actually, not. It's more than a trilogy. It's a saga of games now, but a little bit of a rebranding kind of thing. A little known title known as God of War in 2018.
Yeah, I think I heard of that.
You guys ever... Exactly. I was gonna say we can start the music, right? How to kick off your press conference? God of War 2018, a game that stuck with me too, and I think many people who have played through it. Wow, it's a crazy game. There are some things that kind of frustrated me about it, and it does feel like a really big tease because, like, I think somebody knew that it was going to be doing well enough, but it's crazy to think that whole game, it's very different than the original God of Wars, and I played through God of Wars 1, 2, and 3, and kind of understanding that you have to kind of, that's for some people that might be too big a pill to swallow, but technical marvel in the fact that they don't really ever cut away. It's just like one full shot, and they hide their loading screens, and they do all this stuff to get you fully immersed into the world of God of War, taken to Norse mythology now, no longer Greco-Roman. And Kratos has changed quite a bit, and the combat's really brutal. The camera's really close, so you got to get used to that. You got to like your little pink arrow that's like behind you, or Mimir. But Kane, I want to start with you here. God of War. How do you feel about it a few years out?
This game, dude. There's so many feelings about this game. It means a lot to me personally because my brothers and I have 4 brothers, and we're all really close in age, and we're all big gamers. So growing up, we spent a lot of times just sitting on the couch together watching one of us play a single player game, or like, trading off when someone dies or something like that. And God of War 1, 2, and 3 were that experience for us. We pretty much all like played through it together. And when God of War 1 came out on PS2, it seems like a dumb game now if you go back and watch it. It's like, oh, it's a button mash combat and it's just like in your face, edgy gore and boobs. But like that was kind of like a new, fresh experience when it came out.
Yeah.
And just to that I think that is a example of a game series that did noticeably decline over time, and it was sad to see that happen for me. And then to see them come back with this game and just totally take it in a completely different direction and completely knock it out of the park and just like ace everything, check all the boxes. And like God of War is not known for like this crazy stellar story, you know, it's all about just ripping monsters apart with crazy weapons that don't make any sense, you know. But
much.
like the story in this game is so touching and relatable, and you know, I'm not gonna go into my sob story or anything, but long story short, you know, like in recent years I've had a bad relationship with my dad, so it was really emotional playing this game and sort of relating to the relationship between Atreus and Kratos, and I just never expected that level of depth from a character like Kratos. And man, I don't know, man, this game. Somebody else talk. I'll come back around to it.
All right, Wes, we're moving on to Wes here. Wes, thoughts?
No, I think it's a masterpiece of a game, honestly. I don't know. It's Caden touched on it. He said, you know, and I agree with him. You know how much it's great how much they like knocked out of the park, especially considering, you know, what kind of game it was previously in the series. I don't know if either of you guys have watched the documentary series or the documentary that they did about the development of God of War.
I've heard of it.
I don't think I have.
It's insane to play God of War and then you watch that documentary and there's so much like hesitation and doubt there with the developers and they're, you know, and all the emotion and the tension, it's everything is like super, you know, raw there for these guys, and they're doubting themselves the whole way through and if what they're doing is the right thing. I was reading up on it today. At one point they were talking about cutting Atreus out completely. So he wasn't even going to be in the game, and they were going to make it just a solo version with just Kratos, but that they had this completely other vision for it and how they were going to take it. And thankfully Sony acquiesced and, you know, allowed them the time and the resources to do it the way that they wanted to. You know, thankfully they did, and it turned out wonderful. But yeah, they just did so much right. I mean, I love the fact, again, we've been talking about a lot of open world games, but I just love the exploration in the game. You get to I think it's Lake of Nine, is that what it's called?
Something like
and
that,
you get to you get in the boat and you travel around in the boat from island to island. You know, the side activities were good. The combat was awesome. I love the fact that you have a completely different weapon in this game than you do from all the other games. Yeah. Leviathan Axe, and it just lets you live out your basically your most awesome fantasies of being Thor. You know, you're throwing the axe and calling it back, and it's really great.
Sorry, Avengers.
Yeah, sorry, Avengers. Exactly.
Yeah, well, it's funny too because I know they got the combat lead from that game to come work on.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's hard to completely get Leviathan Axe as Mjolnir in a multiplayer game. But anyway, the combat, that's the one kind of gripe I have because, you know, the old God of War was so pulled back and you could kind of see everything. And once you get Mimir, it's a little bit better because he kind of will warn you for things. But for the frustrating parts for me where it was a little too close or pulled in for that, it was so visceral and still so much fun. And I think my favorite moments were the one-on-ones, and that's like I was fighting all the Valkyries, which I got through all of them, which was really hard. But every Valkyrie kind of teaches you for like the final one,
the final Valkyrie,
But the one thing, like I said before, it felt like such a tease, and I remember fighting the Stranger in the beginning and thinking, oh, the boss fights are going to be like this, and then kind of like the rest of the boss fights not really being as compelling to me because I love in games like Devil May Cry where it's one-on-one against Virgil versus like doing like a horde where it's just like one
Right.
super strong enemy, and I was like, are we gonna fight a ton of people who are just like, hey, what's up? I'm the god of this, and you're like, oh, like, not this dude. Like, but I'm hoping, it sounds like they have cut a lot of that for time and budget reasons for this game, so maybe a lot of that will make it into the sequel. I don't know, but I think
there's a lot of other Norse gods out there. So.
exactly, yeah, and they like, the funny thing is this game is so like, Odin and Thor suck. They suck so much, and I hate them. And I was like, we're probably gonna see them, right? And they're like, nope. And people, I remember, like, it was a spoiler or whatever, but we said there's gonna be spoilers. Yeah, he's got the Blades of Chaos because he's flipping Kratos. Like,
I don't know. I should have expected that, but for some reason, I don't know. I think I let myself like get absorbed in the magic circle of suspension of disbelief, and it's like once he reveals that he still has the Blades of Chaos, I was just like, oh my god! Like,
it becomes like a puzzle thing later on. It's like, if he didn't have this, he wouldn't have progressed. But yeah, I'm the second one. I'm sure they're giving them all the time and money that they need. So
yeah, I think they're definitely gonna let that one cook. Hopefully,
let it cook. No rush. Like I said before we started, I was like, I should have snuck into Sony Santa Monica when I was out in Santa Monica a few months ago. I'm like, hey, so I'm here to do some capture for, God of War 2. And then I'd be like, oh, right this way, sir. I'd be like,
a documentary on the development.
Exactly. I'd be like, I'm here for raising Kratos 2 Electric Boogaloo. And they'd be like, yes, we're excited that you're here.
So you mentioned really quickly before we jump off of God of War, I just want to mention one of my favorite characters of any video game is Mimir.
Yeah.
I just love him so much. And just cruising around the lake and just having him tell you tales.
Yes.
Yeah.
We spent so much time just like, not doing anything but listening to him tell me stories.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's so necessary because the Atreus Kratos, relationship is interesting enough, but Atreus can I think he grated on me a little bit sometimes, and I wanted another party there. And I love that Mimir kind of comes in, and you kind of end up being like these two parents. Or Mimir's kind of like your best friend who's like, hey, man, maybe you should be a little
Uncle
easier
Mimir,
on the kid. Yeah, Uncle Mimir. It's just kind of like, here's a little story for you. So
he bridges the communication gap between Atreus and Kratos really well. Because it's obvious that they don't communicate well. And so having that kind of third party there to kind of bridge that gap is really nice.
I'm going to call it right now. If they do any cutaways in the next one, which I think we should allow them to do if there's a story moment, but I would love to see a flashback to Kratos and his wife and relationship, because that would be, or a great intro to the story to be like, and then you cut to the title and then you do the one shot through it again. I just feel bad if they have to, like, they painted themselves into a corner to be like, we can do it in one shot, and they're like, do we want to do everything in one shot forever? It's like kind of thing. But yeah, well, please, Caden.
Yeah, there's just one last thing on the game. I just felt like it was really, really genius how they if you had played the original games, it lent so much to playing through this game because of everything you knew about Kratos' past, and I felt it almost like made the story lean more towards relating more to Kratos during the events of the game. And then if you were a newcomer to the game, it created this fantastic mystery about what is Kratos' past that was equally as compelling and kind of made you relate more towards Atreus' perspective in the game. So it's like, no matter which direction you're coming at the story from, if you're a longtime fan or you're a newcomer, it created like an awesome point of view for the game, and just was really, really awesome.
Totally. Wes, anything else you want to add to it before we move on?
God of War is awesome.
Yeah, dude. I just want a box underneath the box in his house that has like that Blade of Olympus or whatever, that super big blue sword. And he's just like, he's like,
Blade of Olympus.
I never thought I'd have to use you again. He's like, but Odin's gonna get one in the chest. And if they're making 5 more of these things, Egypt, you're coming up next. Polytheism's gonna die, and Kratos is gonna be the guy to do it.
That would be
I'm
amazing.
Excited to fight Jesus in the 6th one.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm taking them all out. He's like, I'll never I'll never sleep until they're all
Dude, if
dead.
they ever port this to PC, someone needs to make a mod to replace the stranger with just Jesus. So that crazy brawling, like punching him through a mountain, and it's just Jesus the whole time.
That would be incredible. Oh my gosh, yeah. But I'm really excited because they've talked about making 5 more of these things. That sounds like they have a strategy. So we'll see. We'll see about that. But that was 2018. Yeah. Also, another game that came out in 2018 that was an exclusive to PlayStation 4 was good old-fashioned Insomniac, kind of doing something a little different with Spider-Man, which is crazy, known for the Ratchet and Clank and Sunset Overdrive and all that stuff. But then coming in with Spider-Man, you kind of touched on it before. I think, honestly, the best thing about this thing is just how it feels. It's the best feeling game to me out of the whole generation because, like, it's just fun to do or just to be in that world, to be Spider-Man. Like, that's... Like, if you want to be Spider-Man, this is the best way to play. Like, this is the best thing to play. It's so good. It's so compelling. And I like the story. I like the characters. I like the characterization. I like the tease to the future. But, yeah, it's like Arkham plus Spider-Man 2 just smashed together. And they're like, here. It's, like, basically almost flawless.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. Wes, how do you have a history of Spider-Man at all?
I mean, yeah, Spider-Man and Wolverine are my two top superheroes. And so yeah, it was I was super hyped for playing Spider-Man, and I loved every minute of it. I haven't played the DLCs, which I'm really surprised about. I bought them all, and I loaned my game to a friend. And then I'm like, okay, when I get it back, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do these DLC. And I haven't yet. So I've actually been thinking about doing that as kind of like a warm up to Miles Morales when it comes out.
Nice.
Smart.
But no, you're 100% right. The traversal was awesome. I love the fact that there's so many costumes for Spider-Man. So you can it's just a love letter to the character and his history. And there's costumes from different media. There's costumes from the comics. There's costumes from TV shows. You can play as the Iron Spider, if you want to. And they all have. And I love the fact that they have a super move or a specific ability tied to each suit that you play, which is really cool. It's not just an aesthetic thing. You can really play Spider-Man how you want to play Spider-Man in that game, and it's really awesome. I love the character designs. I love the original face of Spider-Man.
Yep.
I'm interested to see how the new game looks. I've only seen the one clip of the new faces that they're doing for the remastered version, but I think that the game looks fantastic. It ran fantastic, and it was kind of everything that I wanted out of a Spider-Man game.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Caden, how about you? It sounds like you're kind of reverberating these thoughts once again.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this game is like the best video game ever made based off of like a comic book superhero.
Yeah.
And just, that cliche like line that's in everyone's review of the game. It makes you feel like, but like it does. I feel like you can almost feel the wind rushing and like the G-force like just swinging through the streets. And like, even if like, it would be insane if they put this out, but if they just put out a game where it's just the open world city and your Spider-Man swinging around and there's nothing else to do, like, I think that would still be a 10 out of 10 game. Like, the movement in that game is so good.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, similarly to Wes, I never played any of the DLC because for me, I feel like the base game was just too perfect. It's like I felt so satisfied when I completed it. I was just like,
yep, you sit
perfect.
back, you're like,
And I didn't feel a desire to like see more or do more. I was like, that was perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah, another must-play game.
Oh, for sure, and it teases the future, and that's why I like the one suit I wanted, which I think they'll probably put in future games. I was like, it's the one I want, but I get why they're holding on to it, but it's like it's
the black suit.
Yeah, I'm like, I need this symbiote so badly.
Yeah.
But I also shout outs to Taskmaster, which is kind of fun, really annoying guy sometimes, but also Tombstone, who's in the game, who's basically they make him into like Ghost Rider because they give him like flaming chains. And I was like, is this like them trying to be like, we could make Ghost Rider? I'm like, don't you tease me. But yeah, that game is just, it just feels so good. And I felt it came out in a stacked year. unfortunately, and that's why I think like it wasn't brought to the forefront of many of like the game of the year discussions. Not that that completely matters, but it was still just like, oh man, this game is finally here, and it just there weren't really any problems with it. It was really nice. Like you just get into it. It's a single player, really strong game. Lots of allusions to other like like the West Coast Avengers and stuff like that. And I was like, this is so great, and I'm really hoping that this is a big, beautiful franchise for a long time, because Insomniac, I was like, Ratchet and Clank, and now you're doing Spider-Man? I was like, okay, Sunset Overdrive, and then now they're still making Ratchet and Clank games, so what do I know? But yeah, such a great game. Easily one of the best games of this generation to me as well. 2018, man, that was a killer year. It was a killer year.
Yeah, 2018 was one of the best.
Oh, for sure. I look back on it, I'm like, good times. Yeah, and I've got Daisy here, who's just... Daisy, did you like Spider-Man 2? She's like, do you mean the first game? Yeah. I do want to mention this, though, and I don't remember how much you guys have played this going into 2019. 2019 was kind of a weirder year for gaming, but Days Gone... I know I've got one person in our Discord who's like, you got to play Days Gone. It's buggy, sure. It's not perfect, but it's a really fun, like, kind of survival horror, not really survival horror game where you're on a motorcycle fighting hordes and hordes of zombies, and they kept delaying the thing. Did either of you guys play this game?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Fair enough.
I bought it after the fact, and I think that the cool thing about Days Gone that I really like is I think it got kind of a bum rap out the door.
Sure.
It got a lot of comparisons to The Last of Us because of the fact that it is kind of a post-apocalyptic game where you fight these zombie-esque, sort of creatures or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of an unfair comparison overall. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I really like about the game is that the more that time goes on, the more appreciation I see for it.
Yep.
Because people are going back to it because it's gone on sale. So people are like, yeah, okay, I'll give this a chance. And you have those people out there who really champion the game, and they're pushing people to try it, and people are trying, and they're like, it's actually, is this game of the year? Probably not, but it's solid.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And that's what the thing is kind of like it had some interesting ideas, and I remember it kind of feeling like a tech demo in some ways because they would show it off at conferences. They'd be like, look how many zombies we can get on screen. And I don't think that was a huge selling point for some people. And that's kind of the reason why. And then it kept getting delayed, and it was kind of frustrating. But I think there's some love for it, which is cool to see. So I don't know. I'll try it out at some point, I think, just because it's like, I think it's a lighter take on a Last of Us type world. It's not as dark or as, gritty. But
I've heard one of the big complaints I've heard lobbed against it is that it is a little bloated.
Sure.
It's a little bit too long. And it's which, a lot of people like content in their game, which is great that they made it, but obviously it can kind of work against the game sometimes. And I've heard that as a kind of a common complaint against it. Obviously I haven't played it, so I don't know myself, but. Sure.
Caden, do you have anything you want to weigh in on this from what you've seen?
I remember when this came out, I don't know if I remember another time where there was such a disparity between the critical reception and the player reception. I'm looking at it on Metacritic right now. It's got a 71 critic score, just straight solid. 7 out of 10, swimming at 7s.
Sure,
but user scores 8.2.
Okay.
With a lot of people, I'm looking through giving it a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. But yeah, this is just another game where it's like if you talk to anyone who's actually played it, like they just gush over it. And one thing that stands out to me from the game that I've seen from gameplay is just the horde tech, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that say like no other game's really done like zombie hordes as good as this one. It's crazy watching gameplay sometimes. Like I just saw one the other day. He's like in a rundown town, and he comes across a horde of feeding zombies, and he starts shooting at them, and then just like out from behind all the other buildings just come like 100 more zombies, and he starts running, and then he's like going over a hill, and then he goes over the hill, and there's like a whole nother horde like coming to join up with the one that he's on, and like it's just like he's surrounded on all sides by zombies. And I can imagine if you're easily scared that you probably couldn't even play this game. Like you'd just be paralyzed with dealing with it. And I've also heard people praise like the motorcycle mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it just feels really personal to take care of your motorcycle, and it's really important because you need to be able to outrun the hordes, and your motorcycle can break down, so you have to like constantly maintain your motorcycle, and that sounds really cool. But yeah, it's definitely one that there's so many games like this out there that they're not like these stellar like masterpiece 10 out of 10 games, but they're like perfectly fine, awesome games. But it just feels like there's so many games that are like these 10 out of 10 masterpieces coming out that like I just don't have time to get to these other games.
Exactly. Yeah.
I would love to play it. It's so far down my backlog.
Exactly. Especially with the Persona 5. Seems cool. With the Persona 5 crit path being 97 hours or whatever, and then you're just like, oh, but there's this other like 30 or 50 hour zombie killing game, and I gotta get gas in my motorcycle, and it's like, I'm so sorry.
One thing that did make me really want to play it, the weirdest crossover after Death Stranding came out, they made a cosmetic that you could get for your motorcycle that replaced the gas tank with a BB pod with a baby in it.
Perfect. I'll say the baby's in there.
It's like, what?
Perfect. That's going to move some copies, which I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say that's the next game I wanted to bring up here for 2019 is Death Stranding, which is a very strange game. Not necessarily zombies, but babies and pods and things. But I've only ever seen stuff on this game. I've never personally played it. I've heard from a lot of people they found it to be enjoyable, but it was such a kind of odd experience that it really divided people. Like some people were like, this is really cool, I like this. Some other people were like, this is really boring, and I have to put down a ladder, and 20 people used my ladder, and I don't really care about this. So, did either of you get a chance to really dive into this game and like really dissect it? You beat it? Okay, okay, good. Yeah. So you guys can talk about this.
Oh, you beat it too, Wes?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Okay. Well, Wes, I'll say, Wes, start with you. Death Stranding. Like, how do you feel about it now, a year later?
I think that it is a good game. I don't think that it's a great game for me personally.
Yeah.
I would put it in that like 7.5 out of 10 range. I think it's got a lot of cool stuff going for it. You see the thing about the Kojima games is he puts out these really cool trailers that he cuts from himself, and there's all the crazy stuff going on. You're like, what is going on? What is this? And he promised, or there was a promise that by the time you finish that game, you will understand what's going on in that game.
Lies, no.
No, actually, I was going to say, I think they did a really pretty good job of wrapping up what is going on in this game. The story is really unique, and I think they told it in a pretty decent way. I mean, obviously, there's stuff that it's like, why does this person have these powers or whatever? Well, okay, you don't really ever get that level of context. I'm sure there's lore hounds that could explain it or whatever, but but I think that they did for a kind of like an open world apocalyptic game, they really created and crafted a unique story. The characters are wonderful. It's super well acted and performed. The thing that killed it for me was the gameplay, really. I just tracking and hauling boxes from one location to the next, where you're just kind of overloaded. Oh, my battery's running out. The thing that where it actually lets me go at a decent pace, I don't have that anymore. So I got to trudge over. Oh, there's another one 300 meters that way. I walk over there. It wasn't that enjoyable for me.
Sure.
There are, a lot of options for getting from place to place in the game, which I do appreciate. You have trucks, you've got motorcycles, you've got exoskeleton suits and stuff like that. But it's just basically walking from place to place. There's a very specific story reasons why, combat is not a thing. You are very not supposed to kill people in that game, because there are huge repercussions if you do, and story repercussions for that. And so I thought, again, the world was cool. I thought it looked great. Again, we talked about that Decim engine before. It looked fantastic. It had a killer soundtrack with a lot of licensed music, and even the original score was very, very good. Obviously, I think it was nominated at the Game Awards for its music. So I thought it was a good game. I'm glad that I played it. I'm glad I experienced it. But it's not one that sits in the annals of my top 10 or anything like that. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, Caden, it sounds like you've got some thoughts on this though too.
Yeah, I think I was more tolerant to some of the
Tolerant. I
dumber
like it.
crap of this game because I'm a huge Hideo Kojima fan. I've played like Metal Gear 1 through 5.
Mhm.
And so much so that between my brothers and I, we're all such big Metal Gear fans and have played them so many times that we almost have like our own like shorthand jargon. It's like our own dialect when we talk to each other that's made out of like 50% like Metal Gear Solid memes.
Oh, really?
But anyway, this game, I similar to what Wes said, I really enjoyed my time with it. I'm glad I've played it, and I don't think I'm ever going to replay this game. And if you're thinking about playing it, I think that when it first came out, there was this sort of like mysteriousness to the game. Like, oh, it seems weird based off the gameplay that they've shown. Like, it seems like you're just walking. Like, is there something more? Like, what is it that people are like losing their minds over? And like, there really isn't anything more to it than that. Like, if you look at gameplay of it and it looks like you're gonna like it, then play it. But if it looks like you're not gonna like it, there's not anything more to it. Like, just don't play it. But there are a lot of things I really love about this game and that I feel like make it unique and stand apart. There's sort of these games that come along every so often that sort of like hyper focus on a mechanic, and like that's what the game is about, I'm kind of struggling to think of another example right now, but maybe it'll come to me later. But there's not really been another game that's sort of dived as deeply and fleshed out as much the simple mechanic of just walking as this game.
Sure.
Like you don't just walk. Like you don't just press forward on the control stick and walk. Like the terrain is uneven, and you can scan and look for patches of flat and difficult terrain. And the amount of weight that you're carrying causes you to become imbalanced if you're carrying too much. So you literally have to compensate for the amount of weight you're carrying by walking slowly, walking over a certain type of terrain, readjusting your grip while you're tipping over. Like you literally hold the L and R buttons to simulate Sam like gripping onto like the straps of his backpack. So it's like you're just totally absorbed in every second of like the act of putting one step in front of the other and making sure you don't fall over. And for some reason, that's just something that really hooked me. I don't know. Like, I feel like if that sounds dumb to you, you're probably not going to enjoy it. It's not like there's anything more to it than that. But also just this feeling of isolation and loneliness was captured so well in the game, especially when there are certain set pieces where you're walking over certain environments and they cue like a really like emotional track to go with it. And just the multiplayer mechanic of sharing the infrastructure that you build on the server that you're on with other players that are online was an extremely unique experience that I've not seen another game do, except for probably something like Minecraft or something. But just it's almost like you had to go through the difficulty and frustration of simply traversing the environment to appreciate later in the game when the players are combining their efforts to put in roads and zip lines and things that make your traversal easier, like garages with trucks in them. So like the first time you go through an environment, it's like step by step and you're falling over and you're having to gingerly walk around like areas that are infested with ghosts. And by the end of the game, you're just on like an Akira motorcycle, just booking it at like 120 miles an hour down the road. And it's just so gratifying. But yeah, I mean, I really did enjoy the game. I think it's something special. And also, I think one of the most emotional moments in any game I've ever played is the ending of that game. Because your relation, we didn't even talk about the baby. God, you got this baby.
There's too much to dig into. We could be sitting here for a long time with these.
Yeah, so long story short, you're carrying this baby around that's essential to your own survival, and you're essential to its survival through the entire game. You form a really deep relationship with, and you're forced to basically kill the baby at the end of the game, and it's
Okay.
I'm not a crier. Like I don't cry. Like things don't make me that emotional. So it means a lot when I say like I got like misty eyed
Sure.
when this scene happened. But yeah. It's just Mads Mikkelsen is in it. He's like the sexiest man ever alive. I mean, it's just a crazy. I don't know.
So yeah, I think again, like that ending was really something, and that's I think the story is what makes that game stand out in my mind, and it was really cool and it's worth experiencing. You mentioned the online portion, and I think one thing that's worth mentioning about that is I think your mileage may vary with that because it seems like it categorizes you with certain people on a server. Like you get stuck with certain people on a server, and those are the people that you're on with. And if those people aren't adding and contributing to the environment, you know, putting stuff down for you, helping you to build those roads and stuff like that, then you don't ever like really get that experience. And I only got that in like one part of the game, like maybe like a third of the way through, where people were like setting stuff down and people were adding stuff, and I went over and I added stuff, and the rest of the game was just like barren. So I think it's a cool mechanic and a great idea, but people have to like invest in it, and you have to get them like, and if you have like a really good group of people that are like building stuff all over the place, man, you can make that game, I don't want to say a cakewalk, but so much easier and so much nicer to go through, because you can ride your motorcycle everywhere to get wherever you need to. But yeah, it would be nice to maybe incentivize people a little bit more to do that.
Sure.
And it makes me wonder if I like went back and I played it again, or like jump back in, because you can jump back in when you're done and go back and deliver more packages or whatever.
Right.
You know, how much more fleshed out would my world be now?
Yeah.
Now that it's been like a year plus since it's been out.
Sure. Well, that's weird because it's like obviously I'm hearing good things and bad things about this game. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Last Guardian, in a sense where like there's some things that people really liked, and then also some aspects that people are like, this is really horrible, this is really frustrating me. Gameplay versus kind of story again. If the story is good enough to drag you through some of the gameplay stuff you might not usually like.
Yeah, and I don't think that I don't want to give the impression I think it's like bad. I think the gameplay is fine, but it's just not very exciting in some places.
It's not for everyone.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, fair enough.
But it has some it really has some good spooky moments in it too, though. So if you wanted to play like a spooky game, the BT sections are actually pretty can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's Death Stranding. And we're going to kind of skip over one here, but we'll come back to it. But you're kind of talking about spooky, kind of scary games. And the one person I know who has played this year, I believe it's you, Wes, more of a recent game that's come out, Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Which I know pretty much all the story about now, and some people might not. But at the same time, these are spoilers. So you know what I mean? Just like I want you to speak freely. But you played through the whole thing. Did you do it right when it came out, or did you do it more recently?
Yeah, I did it right when it came out. One thing that I'll mention that people may not know is that Caden and I run a Discord server together, so we do know each other outside of this podcast. And one of the things we do on our Discord server is a game club. So it's kind of like a book club where we all play a game in our group, and then we come together and we kind of talk about it and the details. And we ended up having like a 9-hour game club and break it up into sections, but it was really long. And but we ended up discussing The Last of Us Part 2 in the game club. So we played it right when it came out. And I love this game. This is one of my favorite games of the generation. And I know that it's kind of a some people love it, some people hate it, some people's like, how could you do what you did in this game? How, you know, you've killed off one of my favorite characters ever. Whatever. I hate you. But, you know, I really enjoyed this game. And I thought The Last of Us was really good, but I really enjoyed what they did with this game. The story has some really gut-wrenching parts to it. It's very violent. And obviously, like you said, they kill the protagonist from the first game almost right at the beginning of the game.
They kill Ellie right off.
Yeah, Ellie I miss her so much.
Joel does it. He kills her. He just beats her to death. No.
But so that didn't sit well with a lot of people I know. But I wanted to see, what vision that Naughty Dog had for this game. And I thought from a gameplay perspective, I thought that it was such a tighter game than the last game.
Really?
The environments are a lot more open. And in the first game, you walk around and it's very much like a kind of like a cover-based shooter almost. And you take cover behind everything. You're sneaking behind cover everything. This game has that too. But everything in the design everything blends in so well that it doesn't feel like boxy like the first game did.
Sure.
Like everything, I felt like you're like behind a square somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, it a lot of it's similar, but you don't feel that. It just feels like a really well designed map, and everything is more open. The enemies are you're trying to sneak around, and you can engage directly with the enemies and fight the enemies head on. That's no problem. But your resources can be limited depending on what difficulty you set the game on. And so when you're getting into these fights, a lot of the time it's advantageous to do it stealthily. Take as many enemies out stealthily as you can. And if you do break stealth and you do get into it with these guys, you can get away and get back into stealth, and the enemies are on guard and they're looking for you. But I felt like that in the first game, it was kind of hard to break away.
Mm-hmm.
And in this game, you can, and I really like that. I felt like there's kind of two sections of the story where you play as two different characters. They each get their own kind of unique weapons and loadouts as you go through the game, which is great. And I liked the way that the story unfolded. I can't say that the ending was really heartwarming or endearing in any way, but I appreciate that Naughty Dog had a vision. They went with it. It was the game that they wanted to make, and it has just some of the coolest encounters and some of the most like genuinely human moments in any game that I've ever played. Like the way that the characters interact with each other, and you care about them so much, and they feel like real people. They may not always make the decisions that you want them to make, Ellie in particular, as she goes through the story, but you can understand why she's doing the things that she's doing for the most part. And it's an experience. It's just an experience, and I think that everybody should, if you can stomach the violence of it, you should play the game, because there's a lot there to unpack.
Sure. Kate, did you have anything you wanted to say about this from an outsider perspective?
Yeah, I think I had to take a pass on it because it came out it came out right after we did the game club for the first Last of Us, and it was the first time I'd actually played through that entire game. And that game just narratively was incredible. Like, I feel like it's not only like one of the best narratives in a video game, but like one of the best narratives in like any media. And to like people who think video games aren't art, like, go soak your head. I don't know. But I think I just didn't want to play it right away because I was still kind of like soaking in like the perfection of the story of the first Last of Us, and I didn't want to like create an opportunity to like possibly shatter that. So I probably just also didn't have enough money to buy it at the time. So that's what I'm really eager to get to eventually. But yeah, it just seemed like anyone who really had anything bad to say about that game was kind of a asshole, and most of like the criticisms were because they didn't want to play a female character, or because a female character with muscles killed Joel, and just like dumb, like sexist, stupid ideas like that. And certainly there's probably more people than that actually have like valid criticism of the game. They're just not this crazy vocal minority who wants to like tear down a game just for having like a female protagonist. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to playing it.
Sure. I watched some kind of stuff about it recently to kind of like get up to speed on it. I guess my issue is with the first Last of Us. I loved it. I thought it was so good. I didn't want any more. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I wanted that. I'm like, just let that
It's
be a
kind of like
thing.
where I was at.
I'm like, just let it be by itself. I don't need to know the future. And like, so this kind of feels like unnecessary to me. And knowing the length of this game being basically like double from the first one, feeling
it's very long,
like a slog to me, and kind of looking into, and also I'm a big, I know you kill dogs in a lot of games, but this one is like way more personal, and like it's manipulative where it's like, well, the enemy really loves dogs, and you're like, and then you gotta like see it from that point of view. I'm like, I don't want to do that right now. Personally.
Jimmy, if you don't want to have anything to do with like dog stuff, then you probably don't want to play this game, because there's some dog stuff in this game, and it's not just even from like, oh, there's enemy dogs.
No, I saw it. I know what they did. Did. That's my legit criticism with this game. You guys are monsters, Naughty Dog.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I can understand. That's pretty heavy stuff, especially when you realize later on in the story some of the stuff that happens earlier on, and there's, I won't ruin it for Caden because he hasn't played it, but
sure.
you make a realization about something with one of the dogs, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, and I get that like some people enjoy like feeling bad about themselves. That's why we have Souls fans, right? I'm just kidding. Like that, I felt like Last of Us already made me feel bad enough, and this one didn't. Like The Last of Us kind of had like oh well, we did all that stuff, but it was for like a good reason, and this one's like, you did all that bad stuff, and there's no good reason for it. You're like, oh gosh. And you're like, you did all these bad things. You can't take them back. And you're like, oh god, you're right. But I get it. It's a gorgeous game. It's beautiful, really well acted. There's some stuff in there, I think most like of the big people who had the criticisms with it, they couldn't deny some of that stuff. You're like, wow, like look at this. Like look at this game. Like this is insane. So yeah. I'm curious to see if they
it's a technical marvel, really.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I'm curious to see if they do make a Last of Us Part 3. But again, that's what I just like. The Last of Us, that first one is just so, it holds a special place in my heart. And I played that. My friend had it, and I would go play it at his place, and he didn't want to play it. He just wanted to watch it like a movie. So we kind of like played through it together, and I was like, oh man, there's like these kind of long, intense play sessions where I'd be like, oh my gosh, dude, it's like a crazy movie like Uncharted, it usually is.
And the one thing, because I don't think people tend to think about The Last of Us 1 as really a horror game.
It is, yeah.
Even though it is.
Yeah.
But this game really ratchets up the horror. So if you like playing horror games and survival horror games, there are some sections in this game that really ratchet it up.
Sure. And that's the funny thing. Nobody in all of these like super long form reviews that I was watching for this, nobody talks about like that. A lot of them, it was more stuck on the story and the gameplay itself, but not like the clickers and stuff, which was such a huge portion of the first game. Like that was like the point of that game, right? Like, how do you stop this thing? Now it seems like it's just kind of in the world, but it's good to hear that they still have big segments like that. Nobody's talking about it. So
there's a boss fight in this game that I will remember forever, just for how intense it is.
Dude, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah,
awesome.
His name is Kiryu. No, I'm just kidding. This is our cross. This is the cross pollination. Last was part 2 though, so that's any other final thoughts you want to have? Wes or Caden? I should say. I'll start with Caden.
There's one thing I'd like to mention that I definitely saw a lot of in the news was just that this game seems to have done more than any other game in terms of accessibility for people that are like hearing and visually impaired. And I just really commend them for that. You especially seem to not see AAA games really do that. Usually if any games do it, they're more like AA or indie games. But I just really wish that kind of stuff would become industry standard, and there was actually like a standardization system for how to put that stuff into a game, because it just really goes ignored a lot of the time. So, big kudos to them for doing that.
Sure. Great. I love it. Wes, anything else?
I could sit here and talk about The Last of Us Part 2 for 9 hours like we did in our game club,
Sure.
probably. So I'm just gonna leave it here. But I think it's a game that, like I said before, if you can, it's a violent game, but if you can stomach the violence, the human moments in it, and just the beauty of the world that they crafted, and you know, there's a lot there, and it's worth seeing. So I would recommend people to check it out if you haven't already, and maybe look past some of the kind of naysayers of the game, because I think it's really an experience.
Sure. And like I said, I haven't played it, but 0 out of 10 for dog violence. No, just kidding. I'm coming for you, naughty dog. What's going on? The dog is in your name. Guys, you should be the ones protecting. Anyway, no, there's more to it than that, obviously, but such an interesting kind of divisive game, too, that it's fun to, like, go back and see, like, all these differing opinions on it now. I will say this, though. What I like about that other person you play as, I like the whole just really good at punching thing. Seems pretty fun. I was like, oh, that character's like, I was like, all right. I'm all about that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, just a little bit of fun in your video game. It's just a little bit. Naughty Dog's like, you're only getting this much. Another game I want to talk about was 2 more games for PlayStation to talk about in 2020 here. 2 major games. One, maybe one of the biggest games of all time, being remade or and whatnot. That's Final Fantasy VII remake, the game that we thought might never happen and has come back in a big crazy way. And wow, what a weird, like, it's so weird we live in a time that we put all this money into making like 1/3 or 1/4 of a video game. You know what I mean? Like, of an old game where it's like, here's the section, and we're going to make more of these. Hopefully it does well enough. And, for people who haven't played the really classic, turn-based RPG that is Final Fantasy VII, this takes place within the first 6 to 10 hours of that, but stretched out over like 40 or 50 hours somehow. Kate, I'm going to start with you here. Final Fantasy VII Remake, what do you think?
This game. This is another one we did in our game club, and I think we split it into 2 or 3 discussions, and each one was like 2 to 3 hours long. Like, there's so much theory crafting going on in this game. It's so open to interpretation, and you just don't know what they're going to do next. But just my background, Final Fantasy VII. I've tried to play Final Fantasy VII a few times. I've never finished it. It's just personally not for me. I just don't really like anything about it, which, that's just my personal opinion. It's totally fine if you like Final Fantasy VII specifically.
Good specification, buddy.
Yeah, I love plenty of the other Final Fantasy games. But so, I was in the weird position of not being a newcomer, not being a fan of the original game, just kind of coming into it sort of like lukewarm, just kind of like playing it because it was the new hotness, and it sort of felt like an unmissable event in gaming. Like, how often does something like this happen, But I came away from it pretty mixed, like I give it like a solid like 7.5 out of 10. It's just like kind of like, it's fine. And it wouldn't even begin to enter in my game of the year discussion this year. But I just overall felt like many of the new additions to the game were not good. The side quests were like freshmen out of game design school side quest design. And then I recently watched this interesting video. There's this organization called World of Final Fantasy or something like that, and they're just like a huge organization of Final Fantasy fans, and they like organize like interesting polls and stuff. But they recently did this really comprehensive poll on Final Fantasy VII Remake that had like over 20,000 people that participated in it, just polling their opinion on different aspects of the game. And what was really interesting about it was they had a section polling how much people liked the new characters. So there's that one character, Kyrie. She's got like the striped stockings. She's a completely new character. I think she's like the daughter or protege of the Master Thief old lady character,
Yep.
who I think was also a new character.
Mhm.
And they broke down the poll between fans of the original, newcomers, and people that had, like, I guess, played Final Fantasy games before, so they weren't like newcomers to the series, but they weren't like huge fans of the original game. And I think like overall, like all those categories combined, like I think it was like 90% of people like voted that they disliked this new character. And it was like, I don't know. I I felt like all the new characters, like Chocobo Sam, like Madam M, Kyrie, and now Johnny's not a new character, but they fleshed out his character more in this game, and I just did not like any of them.
I like Johnny's theme music. That's what I like.
That's true. But I don't want to drag the game through the dirt this entire time, because there were things I did like about it. I did think, though, there were flaws with it. The battle system was really interesting, and it just kind of like depended on what character you played. Like I felt like it sucked to play as Aerith and Barrett, but it was extremely engaging to play as Tifa, more so than Cloud. And I felt like while you were sticking to the main plot for the most part, there's still some like side stuff that was annoying that felt like padding, like the second trip to the sewers and stuff like that. But for the most part, I did enjoy the critical path, and I really enjoyed the characterization of the characters because, in the original game, it's all just text boxes, and we have seen more fleshed out depictions of these characters in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, like in Advent Children and stuff like that. But this was still kind of like a fresh start for them to come up with new interpretations on these characters because it takes place several years before Advent Children, so they're not the same person necessarily. And I really felt like they knocked it out of the park with the main cast, and especially how they fleshed out the Avalanche members, Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. I really enjoyed everything with those characters. But yeah, the game was really hit or miss on a lot of qualities for me. But I guess they mostly got it where it counts. Like the core gameplay's fun, and like the main cast is fun. So it's a solid game, just not like a masterpiece.
Sure. Yeah. Wes, how about you? It sounds like you also kind of have a history with this.
Yeah, I mean, like Caden mentioned, we played it for our game club. I liked it, I think, significantly more than Caden. I think that this battle system that they came up with this game is my favorite RPG battle system ever.
Wow, cool.
I'm by no means a master of the battle system, but it's just so much fun to play. It's so much fun to, you can play it like an action game almost. But I love how you can pause midstream. You have to charge up, your meters, and then you let off these big moves, and you can combo those moves if you're good into some really extreme, really heavily damaging attacks. I don't know if you guys ever watched those like Sunny Legend.
Oh yeah, dude, that guy's awesome.
On Twitter. Some of the stuff he was putting up there with Final Fantasy VII-R was amazing. Just blew my mind. And a lot of them were Tifa based because she's fast attack and can combo really well. But just the fact that you can do that with this game, this battle system, it's just awesome, and I really loved it. I just had a really good time playing the game. I would agree that the side quests were pretty boring and pretty bland, and you kind of have to do a lot of that stuff. You get set up in these missions like, oh, okay, go here, do this side quest, go here, do this. You have to do a number of these side quests before you can kind of move on with the story. And it wasn't super engaging, but I think the game looks fantastic. The soundtrack is one of the best this year. Just the way that they retooled that thing,
for sure,
was amazing. And I could listen to it all day.
Yes.
I love how the callbacks to the original with the enemy designs, like you're like, how am I gonna take this house that I fought in the in this area? And they just, okay, well, let's turn it into a boss battle in the arena. And I really liked it, the way they did that. Some of the story stuff, Cade mentioned before, there's like, a lot of theories on where they're going with that. And you can really go down a wormhole with that, or a rabbit hole, if you want to spend the time. And honestly, when I first finished the game and I started listening to some of that stuff, it blew my mind. And I wasn't really sure that I liked it all that much. But the more time that I've spent away from the game, kind of the more receptive I've become to that. And the fact that, I mean, again, it's a remake in the sense that they're kind of retelling the story, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're beholden to do everything exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the events are the same, but doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome is going to be the same, or what's feeding into it's the same. And I don't know if we want to really discuss the ending of the game at all here.
Yeah, I'll be here for 4 more hours if we do that.
Yeah, so it's probably best to kind of stick clear with that. But there's some wild stuff going on there. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the future with it, considering what they did with the ending of that game.
Yeah. Oh, totally. For me, I did a lengthy review on this thing. It is a game of severe highs and crippling lows. And there are just some moments where I was like, this is firing on all cylinders. It is so amazing. It's so cool. Even if you're not a Final Fantasy VII diehard fan, you'll be like, this is wow. And then there's like, man, I'm doing a side quest to like go and find cats. And you're like, why? And like the gear system I thought was so... or the materia system was so tedious, just because you never knew how long a character would stay with you. And so characters would come and leave from your party a lot. And there was always this weird thing in the narrative where they're like, we got to go save this person. And then they're like, before you left, like, but we should probably stay and do all these side quests. So I was like, do we need to save them or not? Like, it's fine. I just hate having you be like, we got to go do this. I'm like, hey, Barrett, just calm yourself. I appreciate this. But man, yeah, it's so funny too, like some of the textures and then like the reverse skyboxes of like the city on the ground. I was like, how is this in this game? Like, how out of all the games, is that put in here? And a lot of people are like, maybe it was like old images from like the old game and it's like an homage. And I was like, yeah, it seems a little lazy.
The worst looking hotel door you've ever seen.
I know, it's and it's crazy because I'm like, it's a linear experience for the most part because you're kind of running down these hallways. It's a lot of people akin it to FF13. I was like, how, like, I feel like in linear games you can't get away with that as much, because in open worlds you might be like, all right, I found a door in a back alley that I wasn't supposed to go to and it doesn't look great. But this game's like, look at this. And like some of the water coming out of the pipes was like, you could tell it was being spawned right there. I was like, and again, these are just little things because the game, the characters look so good. The main characters. The side characters, like, maybe not so, or the NPCs. I'm like, I've seen you like definitely 2 or 3 times.
Definitely a step down compared to the
but it's, man, I love how the summons look. I don't really love how you get the summons and they're like a VR thing. I was like, I wasn't a huge fan of that. But there's so many cool moments, and I adore Sephiroth. He's one of my favorite villains of all time, and we won't get too far into him, but just seeing him throughout the game, here and there, I was like, I just want to see you more, because I was like, you look amazing, and as Wes so pointedly put it, one of the best soundtracks of this generation for me was this. And how many times have we heard them redo Final Fantasy VII? But this time feels like it's the one. Like they poured the money into it. They're like, make sure that the battle sequence and the theme is just like, oh, you hear it, and you're like, let's fight. The fight system I think is really interesting. Wes, I'm glad it's your favorite of like all time, because I think it's really cool to like mix the old with the new in a way that I would never have tried to come up with. But yeah, there's a lot to like in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but there's a lot to kind of get frustrated with. So I'm really curious to see when they blow this puppy open in the sequel, like what they're gonna do, because it's so, and Nomura being involved in the kind of Kingdom Hearts aspects of it, it's like, it's gonna get wild. I think it's gonna get wild. It might frustrate a lot of fans, but I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad they finally got it out, because we've been waiting for this one. Something with Final Fantasy lately, right, boys? Like, it's just years and years before we get these things out, and I'm just like,
I'm wondering what's gonna come first: Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or Final Fantasy 16. Now that 16's been revealed, it's like, okay. It seems like 16 is pretty far along, considering
I've heard it's been in development for like 4 years already.
Oh wow, so, that's huge. Okay, well that's
like That's like about half the time that they need, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say, if we get Final Fantasy Remake
Yeah.
Part 2 by 2030, I'll be like, I'm impressed. Like, good job, everybody. We got there. I'm also, once we play that one too, we'll kind of get a better feeling for how many more games they could make out of this. If they're going to make 3 or 4. I heard for a while it was going to be 3, but I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. So
I've heard recently that because the game didn't sell as well as they thought it would, it might only be one more part.
Oh, so that means that next one might be like freaking killer. It might be like a 120-hour game, and it's got everything shoved in it. And they're like, "Hey, dude, we got Vincent. Like, let's go." Like, you know. Oh, that's another thing. It's a little thing, and maybe it's kind of a spoiler, but while he's in the game, there's that tease for the last party member you pick up that you can't play as. And I was like, I just want to play as this person, and he's so cool. Oh gosh, they did a great job with the looks of those characters.
I don't know. I wish they would have given you some control with him.
Thank you.
It doesn't make sense that they have him in there for like the last 6 hours or whatever. And
I think somebody cracked the code too, and like they were able to play as him, and they were like, it's in the game, but you can't. I'm not for sure on that, but I remember seeing a video about this, and I was like, really? I was like, it's kind of like Virgil with the Devil May Cry 5. Like he was in the game, if you could crack into it, but they're like, we'll save that for special edition stuff. And I'm like, you're killing me. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm crazy that it came out earlier this year. Feels like forever ago. Last big game I want to talk about exclusively here, and then what I think we'll do, because we have been going on for a long time, boys, as you like 2.5 hours. Maybe we'll like get into your guys' kind of like your best ones that weren't necessarily exclusive. It could be cross-platform, it could be on Switch, it could be on whatever. But I do need to talk about right now probably my game of the year, which at the recording of this is kind of beginning of October. That is the Ghost of Tsushima. The other game I bought my PlayStation 4 for. And man, oh man, I adore this game so much. It is everything I want it to be. It's great action. I do care about all the characters, which usually in games like this, I don't remember any side characters' names. I knew everybody, which was so cool. Like I know, like they're fighting alongside me after I did their cool optional side quests for so long. But it's just like the ultimate samurai fantasy that also has moments of just, peace and harmony, which is I love. Wes, for you, how do you feel about it?
I love Ghost of Tsushima. It's such a great game. Yeah, I was struggling with it when I first started to play it because I felt like I was really bad at the combat when I started out.
It's tricky.
And because I wanted to play like a samurai, right? I was like, oh, let's go in sword only and blah, 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 blah. But that's not really how you're meant. I mean, you can play the game that way. And as the skill tree opens up, you get more options for, your various stances and everything like that. But it's really meant to be played using all your tools, and they give you so many, and it's so fun that it's like, okay, I'm gonna throw a kunai at that guy, and then I'm gonna smoke bomb, and I'm gonna backstab this guy, and then I'm gonna shoot these two guys in the head with an arrow, and then I'm gonna, and then I'm gonna take the last guy out with a duel, and it's oh man, it's just so good. I totally agree with you. And you talk about the tranquility, but I mean it's an open world game, and I've never seen so much vibrancy of color used in a game like this. They just go all out, the yellows and the blues and the reds and everything. It's just so bright and beautiful. And when I first started playing, I was kind of like, well, it doesn't seem like it like the character models and everything, they're not like the most like detail. It's not like your Spider-Man characters or anything like that, or your God of War characters. They're not quite as high fidelity as that. But the more you play it, the beauty of that world just starts to work itself on you, and you're just walking through, and the music is it's not constant music. It comes and it goes, and you get to a spot and you're just like standing up on this ridge overlooking this waterfall, and there's just cherry blossoms falling everywhere, and you have a moment and you sit and you write a haiku about something that you're thinking about, or you sit in a bath and you ponder. You take you don't have to, it's not constant action. You sit and you ponder your your situation, you ponder your life and what's going on with you, and I really appreciate that. It's just cool, and the combat is fantastic. I said I struggled with it at the beginning, but the more time I spent with it, the better I got, and you really do start to feel like such a badass samurai slash ninja. The side characters are all good; they're all memorable, because the game, it doesn't force you. They're optional, but I don't see why you wouldn't want to do the missions, because the characters are good, and their side. Just so Caden, so you know, like all of the main side characters that you meet, they're like characters that will help you as you go through the game.
Awesome.
And you do these series of missions for them. There's like 8 or 9 for every character, and so you really get to know them as you go through the game. And there's 3 acts in the game, and you can't do all of the side missions at once. They're like spread out as you work through the game.
Gotcha.
And through the different regions that you go into, and so you really get a good feel for who these people are and their kind of their faults and their strengths, and they really grow on you by the end. And there's some really good twists and surprises in the story that I liked. Oh man, and it just tugs at your heart. I mean, some of the stuff that happens in this game.
Who is your favorite side character?
Oh, I really liked I can't think of her name. Madam.
You talking to Masako? Lady Masako?
Yeah, Lady Masako. Yes, that's exactly what I like. Lady Masako, and I also really like Kenji.
Dude, Kenji's great. Yeah, Kenji's great. Yeah,
he's always getting himself in trouble.
For sure.
But I liked Masako, and I felt like her tale probably most closely mirrored Jin's tale, because she was out for revenge.
Yep.
Jin lost pretty much everything to the Mongols, as did Masako. So yeah.
Without spoiling it, I will say something with Lady Masako happened that wasn't supposed to happen, and I had to do something again, and so I never looked at her the same way again in the future, because I was like, I saw a different timeline that she never saw, but I just never trusted her for that. I was like, Lady Masako, and she was like still my buddy to the end, but still I was just like, I saw it was like in like Avengers, like an Endgame. It was like you take one of the stones and it makes its own timeline, and that's what happened to me. I was like, I shouldn't have seen this. But yeah, I loved Ishikawa Sensei, the archer master. I loved him.
He rubbed me wrong a little bit,
really?
Because he was so like hell bent on, we're gonna get her, his student, and he was just, wouldn't listen to reason a lot of times, and he was so prickly.
Sure.
Compared to a lot of the other characters.
Okay.
I did really enjoy that, and you don't do a lot of quests with her, but I don't remember her name, but the woman, you go back to your residence to get your armor, and the woman who was kind of like your caretaker growing up. Yes. Her story was just like, I talked a little bit earlier about getting misty-eyed, but just like, you travel with her, and she reveals some stuff about your family's past and stuff, and it's just like, oh gosh. Yep. Yeah,
it's a great game. Caden, it sounds like you haven't played this yet.
Yeah, and it's definitely right up my alley. You'd think I would be tired of feudal Japan, because I recently played Sekiro and Nioh 2, and I also recently replayed Onimusha Warlords. But like, I just don't think it's possible to like be like tired of feudal Japan. It's such an interesting culture with such a unique aesthetic. And the only reason I haven't got to this game is because there's just so many games out, and I just haven't been able to fit it in. So yeah, it's definitely towards the top of my backlog whenever I can get to it. But I've only heard amazing things from everyone who's played it. My brother's playing it right now. He's totally in love with it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to playing the multiplayer.
Yeah, which comes out in like a week or two.
Next week, I think.
That's crazy. I thought it would be out a lot longer, or be a lot longer till that came out.
Yeah, I thought it was
it's
going to be
gonna
sooner,
fun.
honestly. I was like, oh, like, I get why they waited to do it. Like, that's totally fine. But I'm interested to see how that... I wonder how much it's really... If it's just... Is it going to be, like, running around just with your buddies in the open world, just kind of...
I
back
don't
and
think
forth?
so. I think it's going to be more like, smaller areas, and you kind of work your way towards a goal.
Okay,
I
cool.
could be wrong, but I don't think it's like
That's the
just
vibe I
you.
get. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is this, like... Do you have to... Is this a paid DLC thing?
No, it's
I think
free.
it's free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good guy, sucker punch.
Good guy, sucker punch. Which I was gonna say, that's another thing. They like someone was comparing the beginning and ending of PS3 with kind of some of the Insomniac stuff. Sucker Punch now being like they started off with Infamous Second Son, and then they make Ghost of Tsushima, which in a way is so weird versus like you see the Guerrilla Games of the world where they're doing first person, third person. This is still a third person open world action game, but just incredibly competent. And like stripping away all like the super crazy, like super powered aspects, which you'd think on paper people would be like, why would I want to play from this like studio who makes superhero games, like just a samurai game now? But when you play it, you're like, oh, I get it, because it feels incredible and it looks incredible, and it makes my PlayStation 4 sound like a 747 when the leaves aren't going. It's just I cut together like a 23-minute review on it, and it was a true pleasure. I adore it so much, Caden, and I'm excited for you to play it because I think you'll like it.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one more thing I want to say about it that I really like, and I just want to leverage one thing about it that I didn't like.
Yes.
Which the thing that I really do like is the relationship that you build with your horse, and the attachment that you get to your horse in this game is awesome. The way that he talks to the horse, and he like, I wouldn't trade anything for you, boy.
Yeah, it's like, I love
he's like, you mean the world to me. It's just so great. The thing that I kind of I think it's the biggest weakness against the game is the third act. Just because the area is less the third area that you go into is like less interesting visually.
Okay. Yeah.
And I feel like there's less to do.
Okay.
And by that point, it feels like it's getting a little repetitive. You're not. Sure. They don't really add a lot of new things in the third area that you could do in the first two areas. You're basically just wrapping the game up, and so So it's nice that they have another area for finishing up the last of the side quests and wrapping up the main story. But it left me feeling a little bit wanting compared to the first two acts of the game.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't feel that necessarily, but maybe because I did so much of the side objective stuff that I was like, oh yeah, I should probably wrap this game up because I've been doing like every other thing I could possibly see. So when third act came around, I was like, I do want to see how this ends. And kudos to them, by the way. It won't spoil it for you, Caden, but an intimate ending, kind of like Captain America Civil War, which they could have done one thing and then they went in a different direction. And I was like, this means so much more to me because they weren't like, we could do this thing. They were like, we'll just bring it down to this. And it's like... It's like, I don't know, Wes, if you felt that at all too, where you're like, this ending was like, no, it left me like, I was talking about it with some friends online, and we were both just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how like emotional this is, Exactly. It's crazy those games came, like that game and The Last of Us Part 2 came out within like the span of like a month or so. Like those two big like PS4 juggernauts, and they're both like emotional.
And they're so polar opposite, like in the emotions that they're that you get at the end of the game. Yeah. Like you won't walk away from The Last of Us 2 feeling good about things,
Yeah.
But with the end of Ghost of Tsushima, you're like, you just went on a journey, and the way that they wrap this up is just like so. I don't even want to say, because I want Caden to.
Thanks.
I want Caden to be able to experience it without But
guys, cut my audio, and then you guys can gush about it.
Yeah, remember that part where at the very end, Jin woke up and it was all a dream, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" No, just kidding.
And he's actually on the SS Ishimura. Exactly. In Dead Space.
That would have that right there. I would have been like, well. I would like, you've done it, guys. You pulled one over on old Jimmy here. Okay, so that is a brief history of the exclusive games for the most part that came out on the PlayStation 4. I was thinking about doing like this thing where we talk about all of the exclusives, but we've been going on for a while here.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably going to get too late. That's okay. So I want to give it over to you guys. I want to start with you, Caden, to talk about, a game or two or whatever that really spoke to you, cross-gen or whatever, or cross-platform, I should say, that you really loved and wanted to bring up. I know I wrote down a few of yours, so if you can't remember them, I got you.
Sure. That's hard. I'm trying to pick just the one.
You can pick one or two. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Well, we'll probably talk about Monster Hunter one way or the other, so I'll probably pick something else. But a game that keeps coming back to me is the Outer Wilds, not to be confused with the Outer Worlds. This is a game that I think has flown under a lot of people's radar that I highly encourage you to play. And the one thing about this game was I thought that it wouldn't be enjoyable to replay it because the entire point of the game is that you're unraveling a mystery. So it seems like it would be pointless to replay it, already knowing what the mystery is and what you have to do to solve the mystery. But I was staying with a friend a few months ago. I stayed with him for a few days, and he just randomly decided to buy the game, and we ended up playing through the entire game together. This is after I had played the game, and it was really just as enjoyable to replay it and just witnessing his discovery of the game. But just to give an idea of how this game works, it's an extremely unique design where it's a sci-fi game and you're in a star system. And you have the ability to fly between any planet in the star system whenever you want. So it's like an open world star system game. And it's just extremely ambitious. And each planet has its own unique mechanic. So there's like one planet that has a black hole in the center of it that's slowly dragging pieces of the crust of the planet into the black hole. So while you're trying to explore the planet, it's being destroyed little by little the entire time. And there's like an ancient civilization that built a hanging city that like hangs down underneath the crust of the planet. So it's like a struggle to try and explore the city before the entire planet gets sucked into this black hole. And there's another planet where it's two planets that orbit each other, and one is covered in sand. And over time, the gravity of the other planet that's orbiting it is slowly pulling the sand off of it. And that building has like a subterranean cave system that you're trying to explore. So over time, it's slowly filling up with sand. So it's like a time trial. But the gimmick of the game is that you're stuck in a time loop, and you only have 22 minutes to play before the sun in the star system goes supernova and destroys the entire star system. And then you start back at the beginning of the time loop. So you have 22 minutes to explore each of these planets as much as you can. And the only progress that you make in the game is the discoveries that you make and the information that you learn on each planet. And there's no combat, there's no skill tree or progression or anything. The entire point of the game and the reward of the game is discovering what's happening. And it has an extremely amazing payoff and an emotional ending that really sticks to the landing. And it's just such a unique experience. I really just can't recommend it enough. If you're into mystery games or science fiction games or puzzle solving games or exploration games, you really got to play it. It's just fantastic. It was like, I couldn't decide between it and Resident Evil 2 Remake as Game of the Year that year. It's that good.
Wow.
Like, you got to play it.
Sure. Cool, dude. What a great... you said it was like an elevator pitch when you were talking about this. You're like, I would do like a 30-second elevator pitch. That was a little more than that, but it was great. It was really good. It's compelling, right? It's hard to explain that type of game. Be like, you can play for 22 minutes. You're in a time loop. There's a black hole supernova. You've got that much time to play it. But it's
that was a better elevator pitch, yeah.
It's emotionally pay off at the end, so don't do... It's great. You want to make this game? See, that would not be... It'd be more emotional. But dude, that's great. That's wonderful. Wes, for you, do you have a game or two that just spring to mind? And again, we did not cover all of our bases here tonight. So
yeah, I know. We had this whole list, I think, that we wanted to run through, and there's just so much to say, right?
Yeah.
I will be remiss if I don't talk about The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is easily my game of the generation.
Yes.
So it looks like you enjoyed that one too.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to Cyberpunk.
Oh,
It's gonna be awesome. But no, but I won't talk about Cyberpunk. The Witcher 3, I've spent probably easily over 300 hours playing The Witcher 3 between the main campaign and all the DLCs. There's just so much there. I know people that don't like that game say that the combat is bad in that game,
I
but
don't get it. I don't get it.
I love it. I love the fact that you have to prepare for your fights, that you have to, change your loadout so you have your potions, the right kind of potions, the right kind of bombs that you're going in that are effective against a specific kind of monster that you're going against. And I love the spell system in the game for your signs that you use, and just the open world in that game. It's just mind blowing. It's so huge. The city of Novigrad in and of itself, it's like the size of an actual city. You walk around, it has districts, and there's so many NPCs. There's so many people that you can talk to and interact with, and they're all fairly unique for the most part. The coolest thing that I really love about The Witcher 3 is that it's one of the few games where the repercussions of what you do in one part of the game can tie into another part of the game later on. So if you make a certain choice in a certain quest line with a certain NPC, you may run into that NPC later on in the game. And it may or may not have something to do with the quest that you're in later. I remember there's one specific one where, depending on what you do in a certain number of quests, you find these, you get these bounties. Basically, you go into town and there'll be like a billboard in the middle of town, and they'll have bounties posted there, and you can take these Witcher quests because you're the Witcher, you're a monster hunter by trade, and you can do these quest lines, and they have different outcomes depending on the choices that you make during the quest. There's one quest that I ran into where you get ambushed by these monsters later on, and the monsters have it out for you, like, you're a monster killer, you're evil, we just want to live our lives in peace, we're not humans, but we're still sentient beings. And you can basically reason with the monsters and say, look, remember, I had this one instance where I fought this vampire, and I worked out a trade so that the vampire could leave peaceably and be left alone. I had this other deal where there was a werewolf, and rather than kill the werewolf, I lifted the curse from the werewolf. I did, and you can like throw these things that you did earlier in the game back at these monsters that are like basically got you on trial, throw it back in their faces, and you can do the whole thing without having to fight any of them.
That's so cool.
And
awesome. or you can just say, the heck with you, let's bring it on, let's go, and whip out your silver sword and throw some oil on there and have it out. So it's just great. We talked before about the Old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne, and I do love that DLC, but Witcher 3 has the best DLC content that I've ever played, which is the Heart of Stone DLC that came out for that game. Just like the villain in that game.
Dude.
Yeah.
He's that guy. That fucking guy in the tavern at the beginning of the game you never see again. And it's like, that guy?
Yeah. The guy that teaches you Gwent at the beginning of the game is basically the devil in that.
Wow.
And and you have to, and he puts a curse on you that basically he controls you, and you have to do what he said. He owns your soul basically, and you have to try to get out from under that, and it's awesome.
That's so cool.
I think it should be said that the DLC for that game, both DLC are essentially the size of a game. Like, you're essentially buying a whole nother game when you get one of those DLCs.
Mm-hmm.
Like both the quality and the quantity of those DLC is just incredible. Like, CD Projekt Red is just insane.
Yeah, Blood and Wine just adds just a brand new region to the whole entire game.
Yeah.
It isn't in the original game. Heart of Stone takes place in the Velen area, I think, of the main game. But Blood and Wine just blows it out. Yeah, and I love that game. And the main story is cool. The characters are cool. It's well acted. The game looks great. It had some issues at launch. It's gone through a lot of patching.
Yeah.
But if you play it today, it's a great experience.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough good things about The Witcher 3.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I didn't even play the DLCs, but the thing is, like, it starts to make me wonder what Cyberpunk DLC would be down the line. They're like, yeah, it's just like an 80-hour DLC for $20 or something. It'd be like, what? Yeah, Witcher 3. I'm glad you brought that up because if you weren't, I was going to. So I was like, yep, that's one that needs to be brought up. And that came out the same year as Bloodborne, so a lot of people were saying, and it's cool to hear from you guys who are big Souls fans that's
excruciating Game of the Year discussion, dude.
Sure. Well, like you're saying, like the combat, like you guys didn't think the combat was that bad. I think a lot of people who were on the Bloodborne side, were like, oh, the combat's way better here, and I prefer. That's one of the big things over Witcher. But I never really had that problem, and I played both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I too appreciated preparing for the fight. So well done. I haven't played Outer Wilds, but now I want to check that out. I don't even know if I need to go into this too much, but we do need to talk about it because you guys are both here. I'm going to bring up a game that I put 600 hours into or more. It's a little game called Monster Hunter World. I honestly think it is one of the best video games I have ever played ever. And the reason why is because even after hunting the same monster for the 40th time in a row, it is still fun to play. And somehow they distilled down this drug or addiction into the game of like how to just keep attacking these monsters. Or later on when Iceborne comes out and they add things like the Clutch Claw and you have like the ability to smash, creatures in the face or have them run into walls and stuff. And like, it's just a beautiful game, and it just keeps giving, and they keep giving all these free things to you, and there's all these free monsters that show up, and all this like free armor, and all these weapons, and it's just like such a massive game, and it's so much fun, even more when you're playing with friends, and you're coordinating, and you're doing some of these hunts that used to be so hard for you, but now you crush it like it's nothing. But like, I adore it. It like makes me like tear up thinking about it because I loved my time with it so much. The monster designs, the music, the weapons, the world, all of it. I'm like, if they could get some of the frame rate stuff once in a while, which isn't that bad, if they can get some of that figured out, and I want to see what a next gen Monster Hunter looks like. That game, and it sold like hotcakes here in the West, which is so cool because we were joking about Yakuza earlier. They're like, this isn't our first Monster Hunter game, and a lot of people here in the West are like, never really heard of you. It's like, yeah, we've been doing this for a while, and you're like, I love your stuff. You're like, I like this game. But yeah, I think it streamlines a lot of the problems I've seen with the older games. But man, I adore Monster Hunter, and I think I'm in like company. Am I right, boys?
Yeah.
Oh
definitely.
yeah.
Monster Hunter is great. Go ahead, Kate, because you're this is your platform for Monster Hunter. Go for it.
This game is just really special to me. It's really, really, really hard to choose a game of the generation, but I can probably say this is like the most special game to me of the generation. And for a lot of reasons, my intro to Monster Hunter was Monster Hunter 3 on the Wii. I'd never heard of it before. And back then, I was still getting like Nintendo Power magazine, so I was seeing like the Monster Hunter blowouts in Nintendo Power, and I was like, "What?" And then just got hooked on it, and I got my brothers hooked on it because they would watch me play it. And then I think the year before the Switch came out, I had decided to buy a Wii U to play all the Wii U games I missed out on. Not that there are many of them, but there was a port of Monster Hunter. They do this thing with the old Monster Hunters where they put out the game and then like a year or two later they come out with like an enhanced version of the game that has what they call G rank, and that's basically what Iceborne was for Monster Hunter, except back in the day they would release it as an entirely new game instead of an expansion. So that's what Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate was on the Wii U, and that game was really special to me too because that was after I'd moved out of the house after college, and my brother, who I used to play Monster Hunter with on the Wii, decided to get a Wii U to play Monster Hunter with me online. So we probably put like 500 hours like into Monster Hunter 3 on the Wii U. And I met a couple people playing online on that game on the freaking Miiverse, which is dead now. That I'm still like, I made a friend on there that I literally talk to like every day still.
Aww.
And so, I had a lot of really special experiences with Monster Hunter, but it was really like kind of like an isolated thing to like just me and like my immediate family, and like nobody else I knew played it. So like to see Monster Hunter World gain the popularity it has, and finally see other friends in my gaming circle get into Monster Hunter for the first time and finally understand what I've been like raving about for all these years, has just been a really special experience. And like Jamie, I don't even know how many hours I put into this game, because I got it on the PS4 when it first came out, because it was going to be like a year before it came out on PC. And I played like 80 to 100 hours on it. My save file got corrupted. I had to start over. And then I put like 300 hours into it. And then it came out on PC, and they don't have cross save. But one of my good friends wanted to get into the game. He'd never played it before. Wanted to give it a try. And I like had to support it. So I bought it on PC, and so I concurrently had these two saves going on PS4 and PC, so I could play with my brothers on PS4 and play with my other friends on PC. And I've got like over 300 hours in like both save files, and that's how good the game is, that I'm willing to like literally completely start the game over and play it concurrently on two different save files just to play with different friend groups. I've never done that for any other game, and Capcom's driving me crazy not having cross save and cross platform. One of my most anticipated things in the future of gaming is Monster Hunter World 2 coming out and it being cross platform and being able to play with you guys.
It'll be beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like burnt out on the game now. I don't play it anymore, but only after playing it like over 600 hours. The only bad thing I can really say about the game is that I wish there was more of it, more monsters, more weapons, more maps, and I got hundreds of hours out of what is there, so just absolutely phenomenal game. If you like action games at all, give it a shot. Probably like aside from like the final fight with Virgil in DMC3, like best boss battles in the history of gaming, because every battle is a boss battle, Just, oh my God, this game. 10 out of 10.
Wes, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Monster Hunter World also. I don't have the extensive history with Monster Hunter that Caden does. I started playing Monster Hunter on 3DS on Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
Wow.
That came out because I heard a lot of great things from people, like, oh yeah, Monster Hunter, and everybody was saying like, oh, this is the most accessible version that you can get. So I went out and I snagged a copy, and I grabbed I don't remember what they call those things that you can plug your 3DS into, so that you actually have a like a more of a joystick.
Yeah, on the original 3DS.
Pro, that's what I think it's called.
Oh my God, that thing was hilarious.
So I got a Circle Pad Pro so that I could control the camera reasonably and everything like that. And I played quite a bit of that game. I didn't finish it, but it was my introduction to Monster Hunter, and coming into World, it's just like night and day. Like, so how much better things are in terms of the quality of life improvements they made in World. And I mean, it's a gorgeous game. It's fun to run around in the. I love the fact you don't have to like load into the zones now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just
Seamless
like
map.
run around the zones wherever you want. And I unfortunately had to play the majority of the game by myself, because at the time that it came out and I was playing it, I didn't have a lot of online friends. Now, if I were to play it, I could have a ton of people to play with, and it would be great. But I did the whole campaign solo for the most part, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the fights were great. I play bow mostly. And I fooled around with some other stuff with Switch Axe and Charge Blade and some stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed every second of it. And I got the Iceborne expansion, but I feel like once I finished the campaign, I kind of like, and you started getting in some of the higher tier fights, I didn't have the skill yet. I didn't have the equipment that I needed for it. And I wanted to play some other stuff, so I kind of like walked away from it. But it wasn't because the game was bad. I just I kind of had my fill. But I was like 80 hours later.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's nothing. That's nothing compared to like the 600 hours or whatever you guys put into it.
But chunky.
But yeah, it's a great game, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on here, starting with you, Wes, favorite monster or monster design.
Ooh.
Oh,
Hard
my
question.
favorite monster in the game is the gosh darn it, I had it down before it's the cover monster from
Nergigante.
Nergigante. Yes, Nergigante is my favorite. I
Cool.
love Nergigante. I just like the fact that I had to fight him a lot because I was really bad at fighting him. But by the time I finished, he was kind of like a Bloodborne boss because by
Yeah.
the time that I did finish him, I knew all of his tells so well that
Mhm.
I could just wail on him a
Mhm.
lot. And I love the fact that like he starts puffing up, his spikes start coming out. You know that he's about ready to lay into you, and you just hit him right. Boom! All of his spikes get knocked off. He's down. You can go in and just start wailing on him. And yeah, I really did enjoy that fight quite a bit. Bust off his horns and everything else. It's a good fight.
Exactly. Caden, how about you?
I think the most fun I've had in a fight is specifically fighting Velkhana, which is the flagship ice elder dragon for Iceborne, but specifically fighting it with a lance. I basically main greatsword for like my first 300 hours on PS4, and then I switched to lance for like my other 300 hours on PC. So there's something about fighting Volcano with a lance because it has a lot of moves where it makes thrusting attacks at you with its tail. So it's almost like a lance duel. And there's just such a rhythm and flow to the fight that makes it extremely fun for me. Yeah, I love fighting that monster with the lance. It's really fun.
I was gonna say, I'm glad that you guys. It sounds like you both love Elder Dragons. And when you said Wes, when you said cover art, I was thinking, I was like, does he mean like Rathalos or Anjanath? Because those are like the ones we kind of saw more of. And I will never forget seeing this game premiered on Sony's stage and thinking that game looks stupid. I thought it looked dumb. I was like, oh, it's a dragon versus a T-Rex. Whoopity doo. And then I like played it and I was like, oh my god. But for me too, it's like Wes. I love Nergigante. It's got like this like almost butterfly color pattern on its back with like the purple and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that it's just like it eats other dragons, and like every time you think it's dead, it's like it's never really dead. Like it just shows back up in a cinema. Yeah, it's like in cinematic, he's back. Or it's like you're fighting Zora Magdaros, and it's like Nergigante's like, maybe I could take a bite, and I'm like, it's a moving volcano, Nergigante. And Nergigante's like, I'll be set for a week. But yeah, I love Nergigante.
He's like the Jason Voorhees of Monster Hunter.
Dude, that's so yeah. And the first time you hear that like triumphant like kind of Monster Hunter theme again is
the music in this game.
The music is incredible, and like I said, hearing it when you beat Nergigante the first time, and you're like, okay, it feels like you beat the game when you kill Nergigante, but you haven't. Yeah. But then every monster's got like different music, and they're all
every single monster.
Like, it's nuts. It's like. Oh, and it's just, and they all perfectly encapsulate. Like, I'm not a fan of fighting Kushala Daora or whatever, the big kind of steel dragon with the wind.
It sucks.
But the music that plays behind it is so perfectly, it encapsulates that monster, just like every other song does for every other monster. And I just adore the game. And it came out in 2018, which again, a lot of people were like, Spider-Man, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, which we didn't even really talk about tonight. But for us here at Critical Reviews, we gave Monster Hunter World our game of the year because it was a game we couldn't stop talking about. We were like,
that was the right decision.
I'm like, I want to keep playing it. I was like, together. It pulled my friend in, Joe, who only plays like Call of Duty. He's played hundreds of hours of Monster Hunter World. Like that's how good this game is. It was like amazing. Yeah. I'm like, ugh. I just love you, Monster Hunter World.
I think my fondest memory of this generation was, I don't remember what year it was, but it was the year at E3 where they showed off Monster Hunter World for the first time, and nobody knew it was coming at all. And it was always a dream of my brothers and I to get a next generation console Monster Hunter because, in my opinion, I know it started out, well, it actually started out on PS2, but it gained a lot of fame in Japan, portable, and they love it portable over there. But for me, I hate playing it portably. Sure. And it's like, the graphics on the Wii and Wii U version are basically just like ports of like mobile game looking graphics. And they're just like, oh, that next generation console Monster Hunter, like, please. And we just thought it would never happen because Monster Hunter's not popular over here. Well, before this game, it wasn't. And when they showed that game, we were just like, wait, what is what is this? And then like you see the hunter come into frame and he's got the wyvern bone greatsword on his back, and we just like instantly knew. And all like me and like three of my other brothers were like in the same room watching this, and we all just like exploded.
Cool.
Like it was just incredible.
That's beautiful.
Nice.
I love that we
Yeah.
had like the opposite reactions, like because I didn't know it, and I was just like, oh, some sort of weird game from Japan, whatever. And then I played the beta, and I was like, this might be something. And I had my friends play it, and I'm like, we should probably look into this. So, and then it's just history. Yeah, all great games that we've talked about here for the most part tonight. Like there's been a few kind of like maybe not so great ones. I think I'm just going to retitle this just like the Sony's games.
Yeah, we'll have
plus
to do
a
another
few.
podcast.
Hey, there you go. There's your podcast idea for next week. You can run through the Microsoft stuff next week with your next go.
I would. The only problem is I think it's going to be very different and like focused on Disney stuff. So these people might not be the best people to be like, so why do you feel about Gears of War? And like, because I'm wearing my Gears of War Born to Saw shirt because I'm like, we'll make it to Microsoft. What a
Born to
fool I
Saw,
was.
okay.
Yeah, it looks kind of like Born to Love. And I'm like, yeah, because my chainsaw gun. Born to Love. Awesome. Thank you. Anyway, we're gonna skip time killers. We're just gonna move right to the very end of the show here with community feedback and questions, because there was a question here for you guys that I did want to get to. This one comes in from Lodiaz, my friend Lodiaz over on Discord. He said, "Oh, you got Wes and Caden on? That's awesome. Question: what made them start the Great Game Debate Discord, and what game do they think are a hidden gem that everybody should play?" So, Wes, let's start with you. Why did you guys start this thing?
Well, it's interesting because actually I don't think either Caden or I can take the credit for the Great Games Debate. That all has to go out to our friend Jonah Gomez. So shout out to Jonah. The Discord was kind of his idea, and he kind of brought us all together, and he wanted to have a place where we could all, as friends, kind of hang out, talk. He had this idea for this game club that he thought would be fun to do there as well. And so he brought Caden and I aboard as to kind of like partner with him in that. And so we started up, and we started reaching out to friends and kind of inviting more people. And it's grown. It's not a huge Discord server, but all the people there are awesome. We try to keep it positive and fun and non-toxic. And we brought in an additional community member, Steven, to help us out as well. And he's done great things for the Discord as well. His contribution cannot be understated. And that's kind of the way it goes. I think Kate and I have contributed, but we can in no way, shape, or form take the credit for that.
Caden, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah.
Take the credit for it right now.
It's been a great experience for me because it just felt like kind of serendipitous, because I've been a person traditionally in the past who's been really resistant to social media and like kind of like poo-pooed stuff like Facebook. And I think when like COVID hit, I guess, because for a couple months there I was out of work because due to like the government mandate, my job had to close. So I was spending a lot of time at home by myself, and decided to get on Twitter and just kind of randomly met Wes and Jonah on there. And then, we'd have cool conversations about video games or whatever. And then Jonah's like, hey, why don't we start this game club? And, now it's like, it's been pretty bumping. They're getting like a lot of new people recently, and a lot of discussion a lot of the time, and got sub channels and stuff. And so I'm just really grateful for it, for the opportunity, and it's just really awesome to have a community that I can gush about something I love so much, which I don't really get to in everyday life, because not everyone I interact with is necessarily as into video games as I am. And I do just want to give a shout out to the community, because it's just like kind of like staggering how non-toxic the community is. Like, I don't think we've had a single instance of like anyone like arguing or being mean or saying cruel or rude things to other people. It's just like everyone's like a chill person who just loves video games and likes to talk about video games. And so yeah, it's really
and other stuff. We talk about TV,
yeah, we
we
got
talk
movies.
about anime, comics, we talk about music. We've got a whole meme and Zoom channel over there that's pretty fun. So
cool.
yeah.
So okay, and just to wrap that up, underrated gems for both of you. Just a quick one, Wes, from you. Like if you had to just refer someone to a game that you think is an underrated little gem.
Yeah, can I throw out two?
Yes, you can, of course.
Really quickly, and I won't like spend a ton of time on these, but first one is A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Yes.
Good pick.
If you like narrative games, narrative story-driven games, play A Plague Tale. It's honestly, it just blew me away.
I concur.
It came out of nowhere last year. I saw a trailer. I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. I'll try it. I tried it on a whim, and I was just floored just by how good that game is. So yeah, if you like a good story with great characters, play A Plague Tale. And the other one is What Remains of Edith Finch, which is an awesome indie game that will hit you in the feels. Definitely. A lot of in like unique kind of vignette sections that you play as kind of living through the eyes of different characters, but every section is completely unique. Everything that you're doing is completely unique and not in the same way. So look into What Remains of Edith Finch if you want to play a really good indie game that will leave a lasting impression.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Caden, how about you?
I feel like I have this lifelong crusade to try and convert people to this PS2 RPG called Radiata Stories. It's one of my favorite games ever. And when I found it, I was in a used bookstore that just happened to have a random, very tiny used video game section. I'd never heard of the game before. I just thought the box art looked cool and decided to take it home and play it. And it's like one of my favorite games of all time. And it's just a shame because when it came out, it almost feels like miraculous that it was even localized for the West. But I think there was just literally no marketing for this game. Like I had never heard of it or never seen it in magazines. And like pretty much everyone I've ever asked about it has never heard of it. And unfortunately, it's stuck on the PS2, so you have to have a PS2 to be able to play it. But fortunately, because nobody cares about it, you can get a hold of a copy really cheaply. You can. There have been leaps and bounds in the past couple of years in PS2 emulation on PC, so it's fully playable on the PS2 emulator for PC. But shout out to this guy on Twitter. His name's Eli Farmer. I think he's actually a voice actor. And he's been championing this game for like the past year and started like a petition to get it ported. And it's been doing a lot of like marketing for that and making like trailers for the game and stuff. It's crazy how much effort he's put into it. But I think he's Revive Radiata on Twitter, and the petition is just called Revive Radiata. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out. But I think when he first started it and I signed it, there was like less than 200 people, and now he's got like over 2,500 signatures. So it's getting there. I still kind of feel like it's just never going to get ported because kind of like, why would it ever? But I can hope. But it's just an incredible game. It's incredible. Like just go look at a review of it or like a Let's Play. It's got phenomenal art style, one of like my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. It's got this crazy bumping like jazz soundtrack. But yeah, I can't like gush enough about this game. Radiata Stories, check it out.
Cool, excellent. Well, gentlemen, I could talk to you for another 3 hours, but I wonder if somebody made it to this point. If you did, you made it all the way to this point. Let's just, you know what, hashtag Radiata Stories. So that way we know you made it to the very end, and maybe it'll get a little more love, you know, on the Twitterverse. But if you who are listening to this, if you're listening to it just an audio version or watching the actual, you know, us speaking like this little Google Hangouts call, you can always send in your own topics or ideas or questions or whatever with the hashtag Critical Podcast. You can tweet at us officially, which is @GoCritical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm at JimmyGood013. However, if you want to tweet at one of these fine gentlemen, let's start with Caden. Where can they find you?
Sure. I'm on Twitter as I think my handle's at Zora Caviar. It's a Zelda joke. Fishman eggs, Zora Caviar. But yeah, so just on Twitter, pretty much.
Perfect. And how about you, Wes?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mecharecca, which is MECHARECCA.
Nice. And is your Discord something that is it invite only, potentially, it sounds like?
Yeah.
I think it is, but yeah, we're open to just like giving out invites.
I know
it's not
that
exclusive or anything.
Jonas put the link invite out openly a few times, but yeah, if somebody's interested in joining up on the Discord, hit Caden or I up. We'd be glad to shoot you an invite. If you
just toss a link in the comments on the video too.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I can do that, and yeah, on this whatever works best for you guys.
Yeah, the Discord is called the Great Game Debate. So
perfect, excellent. Well, guys, and the reason I wanted you both to be on the show, and I've said this before, these two guys are some of the reasons why I actually still look at Twitter. Because they're really usually positive and nice and understanding, and they like to talk about stuff in a nice way. So yeah, I would really recommend you guys go follow them, and if you should check out the Great Game Debate if you have a chance or the inclination. And if anybody from the Great Debate or the Great Game Debate server is listening to this, hopefully they are. Hi, thank you for listening to all this. Hopefully it's more game debate stuff, and maybe you're like, yeah, this Jimmy guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but that's okay. You stuck it out to the very end, so kudos to you. I'm very proud. Yeah, there's plenty of ways to support us, but Patreon's kind of the best way, and you see the names popping up here. But yeah, I just appreciate you guys being here today. Thank you so much. This was so lovely. I could talk to you guys each week like this. This is so good, and thank you for making the time, both of you.
No, thank you, Jimmy, for having me. It's honestly, this is my first time doing a podcast, and it's been so much fun. I've enjoyed it so much. I really appreciate you having me.
Yes. Caden, how did I score? How did we do here?
Yeah. Similarly, first time on a podcast. We had an absolute blast, just unadulterated, gushing about video games for 3 hours. So, but yeah, I've had an amazing time. It's been great. And, all your feelings about us are mutual, Jimmy. You're just an awesome person, and
you're
probably the most
font of positivity. Yeah.
And, if anyone wants to check out, Jimmy's streams, I highly encourage it. It's extremely fun experience, just chilling with a friend, playing a fun game, having a good time. So
it's extremely personal, because I will, if anything, if you write something, there's a really good chance that I will immediately respond to it. I'm oh, how you doing? Yes, I appreciate that, guys. It's so nice to meet you, and you guys are podcast professionals. If this is your first time for both of you, you guys did a great job. Isn't it easy? People do this, they're just doing it all the time. See, it's just we're just talking.
Quit my day job.
Quit your day job. Let's just all just podcast forever. But I appreciate it again, you guys, and hopefully, if you guys are interested, I'd love to have you back on the show sometime. So,
I'd love that.
Anytime. That would be awesome.
And maybe we'll do it before the PlayStation 5 is wrapping up, and then we're talking about all the great PlayStation 5 games that are God of War 2 was good, but God of War 3 really knocked it out of the park. God of War Turbo Ragnarok, you're it was so good. Yeah, but again, thank you guys for being on, and thank you for listening. Until next time, everybody, love and hugs. Be nice out there to one another. And just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye.